The short version is quite difficult. It doesn't really lend itself to, the 7-second description. But it's a science fiction game. That's how I think of it in my mind. Everything else comes from that, right? So a lot of people will pick up on procedural stuff and the infinite universe and stuff like that. But as a game, like minute to minute, second to second playing it, it's sci-fi, It's the sci-fi I love, right? Which is not really the sci-fi that's in games generally. Yeah, like sci-fi for me is like the frontier, like the final frontier, to just be really cheesy, right? But the kind of unknown, like what's out there. And I think sci-fi at the moment in games, films, stuff like that, it's making a comeback, but it's generally like today's war, but just with like lasers or something like that. It's just very, it's very much just almost like science fantasy. It's like future war basically, and that's not what we are. Well, in terms of ecology, like almost anything's possible, right? The type of creatures that you see, we almost don't really know what's out there. The kind of environments that you might find, it's really, it's not random, it's not chaotic, but it is procedural. It's like, it's possible to find something unique that will really surprise me that I didn't know would exist. Like even in terms of how we build it, we build these kind of simple rules. Okay, so water creates atmosphere, a certain type of atmosphere. That atmosphere and the contents of the water affects the moisture that's in the atmosphere. Then that might change the color of the sky and determine that. It'll determine the weather. It will determine what kind of life grows there. So like something that's really simple can create these kind of seemingly emergent, chaotic kind of systems. So this is a really key thing. Like, and we have arguments about this all the time, okay? Like, when we're choosing these rules, we're choosing gameplay always over what's scientifically true, kind of thing, right? Because otherwise, it's just some kind of tech demo, right? So there are key kind of gameplay elements to it. Something that we showed, or at least tried to show at E3 last night, was that this isn't an ambient universe. This isn't something you just wander around and look at trees and to kind of breathe it in.
Yeah.
There is danger everywhere. So the creatures are dangerous, the ecology, but more than that, in space there are friends, like the wingmen who fly beside you. There are enemies who are attacking those freighters. But in terms of gameplay systems, this is a universe, and you make your own gameplay within that, right? So those freighters, I could have started attacking them, and I would have gotten a reward for, blowing one of them up. I also would have gotten a reward for destroying all the attackers, right? And that would be effectively a monetary reward, which will help me upgrade my ship or upgrade my weapon or my suit. And that's kind of a core game loop, but nobody is telling you, on a planet, you don't find a guy who's just like, there will be some freighters here, go and protect them, and I will give you 5 gold.
Yeah.
We like abhor the idea of that. We don't like the idea of levels, of scripted sequences, of quests, of, I have lost my 5 pieces of amulet and my 3 space chickens or whatever. But you could kill 5 dinosaurs. Those were AI, those wingmen. But you could encounter other players. The reality is, the likelihood of that is tiny, basically. What we're dealing with is planet-sized planets, you know, so even just one planet, if a million of us played, we would still be really far apart, right?
Right.
So scale that up to a universe, it's actually really unlikely that you and I are going to meet. There are elements where you will get crossover and interaction from other players, but that's not what this game is about. We're like, some people think it's an MMO, we're the opposite of an MMO, right? We're doing the worst thing possible. We're taking all the players who play and we're like flinging them across the universe. But you can interact, and you can interact in significant ways, but that's not what's core to the game. And you see that in the gameplay we showed yesterday, that you get to discover not just planets, but like lakes, mountains, rivers, whatever, but also resource seams or space stations or certain trading routes or whatever, and you can then discover them, choose to upload them, or maybe keep that information to yourself. And when you start off, if you were the, you know, which I hope you will be, the very first person to play, right? If you're first in, you'll bring up your map and there will be no information. You will be able to see all the planets, all the stars, everything, and zoom right into them, but it will just say unknown. And then as more and more people play, which we kind of hope they will, that will begin to get populated. And people will be perhaps attracted to places that have been discovered. They'll think, oh, I see a trade route, I see hospitable planets over here, I'm gonna go there. But some people will be kind of lone wolves, like frontiersmen, and they will say, I will go nowhere near that.
Yeah.
I'm going over here. Nothing has been explored over here. This is the great unknown, and people will charge towards that. We want persistence, but we can't have persistence of everything, right? So we have persistence of things that are significant. So if I shoot a bird, then we don't feel the need to share that with everyone, okay? But it is saved locally, but that's locally stored, and that bird is dead forever on your machine, right? You've done that, you horrible person.
Right.
And I know you will. If you do something of significance, maybe you take out a space station or a fleet or, you know, something like that, right? Or just, you know, desecrate a planet, take away all its resources, whatever. Then we might think that's significant and we might share that. And then that would be the same for everyone. We're this super small team, and we're making this ridiculously ambitious game, and all we're gonna do if we tell people when it's out is probably disappoint them. So when we know for sure, then we will announce it, and until then, we'll keep our stupid mouths shut. Yeah, well, this has been a really difficult game to show, I guess. Like, we had to find this location. We don't build this. This is like procedurally built, this whole terrain and everything. So we had an idea, we did some concept art, and then I literally flew around this universe looking for something that looked a bit like the concept art. So you just come out of a big cave network. That's actually a huge cave behind you. And you're coming down to this watering hole and seeing some creatures. And these creatures are like, they're procedural as well, right? So they're unique and you kind of won't see them anywhere else. So there's any number of ways that you can play the game. We try not to be super descriptive, so I guess a lot of people would call it a sandbox game. I probably wouldn't. You know, you're not on really specified quests or whatever, but there's lots that you can do. So for instance, you could run away, but you could also have attacked that creature, you could kill it, you could have collected some resources, which you saw in the cave back there. You could now be coming up to this space station to trade or upgrade your ship. You could be building up like a team of wingmen like you've got here. You could decide to attack these freighters or not, or you could join in with these pirates who are attacking. There's a lot that you can do, but we're not giving you specific quests. We're not saying go and find the amulet pieces on all the different planets or whatever. You know, this is a game that's been in our heads for so long, and actually over the last few years, seeing things like Minecraft and DayZ come out has really made us feel like this is the right time to be making this game. You know, this is the type of game that we're really excited for. Something that's a bit more, you know, open and freeform and kind of real. Like, this is just a real universe. You go and play and interact with it how you want. Okay, so the HUD is actually to do with compass. You don't see me use it during the gameplay.
Okay.
Up on the top left, you're actually seeing a readout of what planet you're on or what system you're in.
Okay.
And that's really interesting to watch in like the montage video, where you can kind of see that over and over again. You've got weapons. You have weapons on the ground, and you have weapons in space, basically. So you're getting a readout of those. You know, again, we're not really that kind of game. There isn't levels, there aren't missions, there isn't a story. We don't tell you who your character is, you know. And so you could say, yeah, a bit like maybe Minecraft, a bit like, you know, some of those other games, Terraria or whatever, Starbound, that are more freeform. I think there's two schools of games that are going on at the moment. There's the really descriptive school, right, where the designer is just grabbing you and pushing your head through a game, through a set of levels that they've built, through a bunch of corridors, and making you look here and die here and survive here and collect health back there. And we're just the total opposite of that. You know, we're something that's a lot more kind of freeform, definitely. So obviously in space you have kind of like, I guess games like Elite and Privateer and X-Wing and things like that are big influences of us, and it does handle like that. It's quite arcadey, you can probably tell that. On the ground, you know, you do have a weapon. You see some clips of that in that like montage shot we did later on. And that is a weapon, but it can also be used to scan, to like kind of interact with the world as kind of a sci-fi weapon, basically. It's not like just a plain assault rifle. It's more like if you think of like a tricorder that they had added like Star Trek. It's got multiple uses that you can upgrade in different ways. And in some way that is your, like that is defining your character, how you upgrade your ship, how you upgrade your suit, how you upgrade your weapons or whatever. Well, we're not trying to make like some massive AI sim or whatever, you know. But like these creatures that you see, they are intelligent, much more so than in normal games, right? In normal games, you're used to kind of scripted behaviors. With this, something like that, those deer, you know, they will come down to that watering hole because they're thirsty, and then they will go back out on their route, and they will go somewhere, and they will eat some grass, and they will go to sleep and things like that. They will be startled by you. You know, so there is a lot of intelligence that's going on that you can just observe, that you can just watch, but you can also choose how to interact with that. When can you play it in your home? I guess we haven't announced that, and we're probably not announcing it yet. It's a super ambitious game, but we really want to bring it out soon. So right now, it's obviously we're at the Sony press conference, so we're definitely coming to PS4, and that's kind of going to be the console debut for that. I'd really like to see it on PC as well. Well, we haven't really, you know, we're not kind of talking about other platforms now, I guess. It was insane. It was just insane. I mean, you do this kind of thing. You get on camera and stuff like that. This is not what I do. It's not what I want to do.
Not in front of that many people.
It's like, it's insane, you know? Like, someone was telling me kind of, basically, millions of people were watching, like, more than the population of Ireland, which is where I'm from, and you just start thinking that before you go out. Like, they had a teleprompter, and I had written a script, but then it just kind of, I don't know, emotions, you just start talking. I was like driving them crazy with the teleprompter. They were trying to follow what I was saying, like, which bit is he on now? You could just see all these screens going up and down. I think one thing, that's a good question, one thing that I really wanted to show was that this isn't just like an ambient experience, right? There's like, this is a universe, but it's one that has a lot of danger and things in it. So like, you know, on the ground there are other creatures, there's an ecology, and there's like you're not necessarily the top of the food chain
Yeah.
kind of thing. So there's danger from that point of view, but then when you go into space, space isn't just empty, you know, it's really full. There are freighters, there's fleets, there's, you know, kind of pirates, space stations, military, you know, there's a real ecosystem within space as well. And I guess the other thing was just showing that it's, I don't know, seamless is a weird word, but like, it's all there, it's all real, you know, when you actually look up at that dinosaur, there's a planet behind it, and that's the planet that you end up flying down to
I didn't
later.
even notice that.
And you could see like some of those floating islands that you fly past, you could see those kind of on that planet, and it's there, it's real, it's not some skybox or whatever. And that's kind of what we wanted to get across. Yeah, I guess like quest is that terrible word.
Yeah.
It's that thing that, I don't know, in my mind, as soon as somebody says it, I picture like flying down to a planet and somebody just coming up to you and saying, I've lost my 3 chickens, you know, like my space chickens. You know, they're on 3 different planets, can you find them, that kind of thing. And we, you know, lots of games have that, it's great and all that, but we just want to stay so far away from that world, right? This is like, it's not a sandbox, it's just a living, breathing universe, and there's a lot that you can get up to within it. But we're not saying find the 3 space chickens, right? So things that you can do, like you actually see resources and things like that. You know, and you're scanning for those. Those are really valuable. You could be scouting for creatures or whatever. You could also be fighting those creatures. That could be something that you decide to do, right? Wipe out a species or whatever, you know. But then in space as well, there is so much to do. But you know, between like trading, fighting, you know, forming allegiances, whatever you want to do within that. And we just want to create a universe that has emergent gameplay, I guess, and that the players will find that themselves. The kind of key driving force, though, is that I was saying last night that everyone starts on a different planet. Actually, the way we do that is, we haven't been compared to Scientology before. I don't know if it's one that we welcome, but okay. No, we start everyone at the outside ring of a galaxy, basically, of one galaxy. And then, you know, a core quest, I guess, if you want to put it that way, a core thing that I think people will undertake is to make the journey to the center of that galaxy. I think it's kind of naturally part of it. If you, one thing that's like really key to it, right, is if you play and you're the very first player and you bring up your galactic map when you're in that galaxy, like everything will be there. And you will see like everything on the map. You will be able to go to all the planets and all the suns and moons and everything like that, but they will just say unknown because nothing's been discovered yet. You know that they're there, but you don't know whether they're hospitable, you don't know whether there's resources there, you don't know whether there are space stations, you don't know whether there are trading posts, you know, anything like that. And then as you explore more, you will find those things and you can upload that information. And that map is being filled out, but not just by you, by everybody. So even if you don't want to cooperate with people, they are helping you. You know, together, you know, what we find is that people are naturally building almost like routes, right? You say, where I am, there's nothing known around me. But I can see over there, if I make a journey over there, there's kind of this nice plotted out route where I can see. Right, exactly. You know, that's, the game is about exploration, and it's about discovery, but that's what science fiction's about. You know, and science fiction, if you take Star Trek, right, you know, it is about exploration, discovery, but they still always end up in, you know, combat situations or, you know, dangerous situations. So it's not an ambient experience. It's not just exploring, looking at trees. You can do that if you want, you know, but that's kind of not how I play it. Something that's hard to get across is that this universe is so vast that the likelihood is you're going to come across AI. We need AI to populate it. Because you and I, if we're playing, you know, we won't just say, let's meet up. That doesn't make sense. We're light years apart, like literally, you know. Like a ridiculously long time. But that's one of the reasons that you would say upgrade your ship,
Yeah.
right? Because you want a hyperdrive, you want to be able to jump between solar systems. But yeah, you could fly endlessly, right? You know, and that's what I want. There's that story recently of that guy who like walks, you know, forever in Minecraft, basically, right? And yeah, you could totally do that, and hopefully someone will.
Yeah.
We've probably failed otherwise, right? If somebody doesn't just fly for like 5 years straight. So you're not. There is the ecology, right, and that's just kind of naturally there. There is, like, I'm terrible for this kind of stuff because there should be like a press plan or something like that. You know, there is like, I guess, a malevolent force within the universe, right? So there is something that drives that emergent situation, right? That we haven't shown, and when we show it, we'll talk about it. Absolutely that, and that's what I was saying about starting everyone on a different planet, you know? Like, everyone's story will be unique. I mean, if you and I, even if we want to, we can't have the same story, right?
Yeah.
You know, our experience and what you'll have seen when you're playing it, I will want to know about it, you know, because I will probably never get to experience it. You know, I found this or I saw that or whatever. You know, I'm this type of planet, this type of creature, and I'll play I can play for hundreds of hours and I will never see that. I will never visit the planets that you've been to. The kind of montage thing that we did at the end, that's 65 days as well.
Okay, cool.
And we've kind of become friends with the guys.
Yeah.
They were mailing me last night and congratulating me and stuff. We actually wanted them to play live last night.
Oh, wow.
And we like cancelled it like 2 days out.
Okay.
Right, because nobody was prepared for it basically. And there was no time for rehearsal and things like that. And when I came into the Sony conference, you know, when I met the team for the first time, because we've been in the UK and just talking to them on the phone, I came into the stadium and they were like, hey guys, these are the guys who wanted a live band. But yeah, we really wanted that, and they're going to be, I hope, really closely linked with the game. Right? What we want people and to encourage people to do is to go on a journey. This is not about just staying on one planet. Okay. You know, setting up a shop or whatever. I think people will. Some people will, but that's not core to the game, right? I'd be slightly disappointed if everyone just started up on their planet and then didn't see it's nice and chilled out here. So it's, you know, go back to the start and try again. It's not that type of game. Okay. Right? It's not, you know, the idea of levels, quests, all that, like, throw that out, right? You can play forever, like, obviously. You know, it's. I know that's a little bit mind-blowing because it's infinite, you know? This is the really weird thing, right? You can play for 1 million hours, right? And the amount that you will have seen in that time is still infinitesimally small. You know, any number you divide it by infinity, it approaches zero, right? So yeah, something like that, a little touch. In terms of multiplayer, you know, like, we're not building an MMO. That isn't the type of game that we're making, right? Like, it's almost an antisocial game because MMOs try and like put you into lobbies and push you together. We're firing everyone across the universe. They'll probably never see each other, but there is the ability to communicate and work with other people. But if you want to, I won't go into loads of the details, but if you want to think about games that I really admire, would be like Journey and how it does it, Dark Souls and how it does multiplayer. You know, those are games that experience for me is really fitting. What we do is we create like a genus of a creature, right? Okay. So it is built. It's built out of a kind of, it's almost like building something out of clay, right? So we build a creature and we will build, say you build a cat, okay? When you build a cat, it's almost like the game, the tech that we've built, I'll describe it this way. You know Tony Hawk's, right? When you would create a skater. You know, you create a skater or like a Tiger Woods or whatever, and you could move all the sliders. Yeah. And you would create any variation thereof. So imagine that we're doing that for everything. So for every tree, for every building, ship, everything. Mountain. Right. But what's happening is that one of our artists will create a cat, but
Yeah.
by doing that, they'll also create a lion and a tiger and a panther and every variant of that four-legged creature that that walks in that way. But like continuing on that to be as mutated as you can possibly imagine it. We're kind of like, we're not on the show floor, just because it's a weird game for people to just come up and play. So No Man's Sky is this crazily ambitious game that we're making as, I guess, a tiny little indie studio. It's a game that's been in my head, in our heads for like the longest time, and we've talked about so much. I guess the first thing is it's a science fiction game, you know, and like most people when they hear that, they think, oh God, you know, like there are so many sci-fi games and they are all cut from the same type of science fiction, which is kind of post-apocalyptic, dystopian, and you know, the world is a really messed up place. So we're not that. We're much more, I guess, inspired by the sci-fi books of like the 60s, 70s, that kind of thing. That were much more interesting type of sci-fi. So in the No Man's Sky universe, you know, you have a variety of different ways to play, but we really want to leave it open to the player. You know, some people will call that a sandbox. I don't really. It's just that there is this universe, and it is a working, living, breathing universe. Every planet has an ecology. In space, there are trade routes, there are freighters, there are shipping lanes, whatever. There's space stations, and they're just working, you know. And we let the player loose in that. You know, if you think back to games like Elite, that's what they did. You know, you can upgrade your ship, but really, you just go about and decide how to have fun, you know. And there is a lot of kind of fun to be had within that universe. So you might choose to be very combat focused, and if you do, then there is an awful lot of combat situations that you can get into on the planets, but also in particular in space. But you also might choose to be an explorer or a trader, or, you know, just totally focused on upgrading your suit and your weapons and your abilities, you know, and traveling further and further and deeper into that universe. Because you start on the outside ring of it, and that's a big aim for a lot of people, is to try and get as far towards the center of the universe as they can. So there isn't that kind of narrative. You don't suddenly enter the game and there's a tutorial and it tells you exactly what to do, and you then just go on a set of missions or levels. It's not that type of game. But there is still like a lore to the universe that we have kind of created in our heads and try and embed into it, you know. And that kind of symbol that you see everywhere, that's like on my t-shirt, we call that the Atlas, and that's an important part of that lore. We haven't really talked about that yet, and that's because the game is about exploration, and we want people to just get in there and discover that for themselves and start piecing it together and maybe come up with their own interpretations or whatever. No Man's Sky isn't an MMO. You know, it's actually quite far from an MMO. And we never set out to build that type of game, right? We want everyone to share the same universe. We want people to feel the impact of other players. But there are so many things that are core to MMOs that just do not suit our game. The very first thing is an MMO tries to crowd everyone together, right? We do the total opposite of that. We take them and spread them as far apart as we can, scatter them across the universe. It's the worst idea for an MMO, right? There are no lobbies or anything like that. You're generally playing not alone because you're surrounded by the life of the planets and space and everything else around you. You know, this kind of living, breathing universe. But you are kind of playing the role of an explorer, of a frontiersman, you know, of the kind of classic sci-fi character, just being in the great unknown, on the kind of
final frontier, right? And you aren't there with necessarily all your friends because they are like light years away. No Man's Sky is hopefully coming soon. We're super hard at work. It's an incredibly ambitious game. E3 is actually a massive milestone for us, not just in terms of putting a demo together, but actually where the game's at in production and stuff. But yeah, we've got a lot to do, so hopefully people will just be patient for us. It takes a little bit of time. We're kind of doing a console debut on PS4. We're super interested about PC, but we haven't made any announcements about that yet. And yeah, coming soon. Ish. It's a good question. Like Joe Danger is a game that we love, right? And that a lot of people really love, and still has a huge place in my heart. And now that I've been away from it for a while, I can actually go back and play it and enjoy it. And I really enjoy it. But it wasn't what we set up our games to do. We wanted to be quite ambitious. And I guess you're right, like Joe Danger is of a size that most indie games are. And No Man's Sky was something that we'd been talking about since the day like Hello Games was formed, really. And something that's been in my head for years before that. I think JD had, reviewed really well and it sold better than what we expected. And you think, well, will I do something better than that? If I go for the same size? And we kind of thought it's time to make that game that we've always talked about.
Right.
And it was called like Project Skyscraper. And that was just because we wanted to build something that was super ambitious.
Sure.
It is open-ended. It is this kind of like, sandbox to some extent. The universe is your sandbox. But I know that for gamers like myself that kind of grew up with more descriptive games, we like to kind of know who you are and what's the narrative and stuff like that. We don't have those things really. We don't tell you who you are or why you're there. We have an idea of that, but we leave that up to the player. We don't tell you that you're male or female or even human or whatever, right? You won't hear your voice. But you will end up doing battle with them occasionally, right? You can't avoid that. Some of them will instantly take you to be an alien in their universe and attack you. Some of them will attack you just because you're not following what they see as their protocol or whatever, or you're invading space that you shouldn't be in. And I really like that when I play the game, those things naturally happen, naturally emerge. And sometimes you're just not sure why, and you start to have to learn a little bit more about the universe. And I think we've become really good at telling you everything you need to know about a game before you play it, to the point where you pretty much know how it starts, you know where you'll be in the middle, and you know how it'll end. I mean, like I played Watch Dogs and I actually really enjoyed it, but I had watched like 13 different videos about it before I played it, and there was so little surprise left for me. And I think we want to leave that a little bit for the player. This is a game about exploration. Not in a kind of an ambient way, not in like a way that is just, laid back and boring, right? In a sci-fi way, which is kind of adventure and discovery. And so are the ships, and so are the buildings, and the terrain is, and all the foliage and everything. Yeah, that's the whole, the whole point when we say procedural. We are building up sets of rules. We actually create a prototype. So that dinosaur, there will be a prototype for that, which an artist will build. And then if you imagine like an MMO or a sports game or something like that, where you can create your own character, and I spend like forever trying to create myself in there, and it looks like nothing like me, right? But you can change, your size, your weight, the length of your legs, whatever it is, right? If you imagine that system, but we do that for everything, right? So we do it for every type of tree, every type of creature. So you can create a dinosaur, and some of them will then naturally have really long necks, or have longer legs, wider, or totally different colors, or have horns, or whatever. So we're kind of freeing ourselves from those bounds of content, of having to create so many different variations. The system just kind of does that for us. There is like a group of people that I'm in love with, that are growing up with Minecraft right now, and DayZ and things like that, and Minecraft's the first game they've ever played. And somebody tries to, friends of mine who, like those more traditional games or whatever, and I try to turn them on to like DayZ, and they just can't grasp it. They're like, why are you playing it? And you explain it, and they still say, but why? How do you finish it? How do you complete it? Or whatever. I feel like games has gone so far in this direction that it's almost like a response to that. That you want to swing things back a little bit this way. I mean, I still love a lot of the AAA stuff. I'm still excited walking around E3, but I also crave something different. It's like you've been eating meat non-stop. Mine seems salad. I was always kind of dreaming of this game since I've been a kid, in a really real way. I didn't think, I'll make that game. I just thought, wouldn't it be cool if there was a game where, and I think everyone has had that. I think I heard somebody saying it's like a pitch from a child, basically, which is like, there'll be a universe and you can go everywhere and you can have a ship and you can shoot lasers and, all that kind of thing. It's like the most childish idea for a game in the world. And it was really fueled by sci-fi as I had always experienced it, which was books that I'd grown up with, like actual science fiction. We always knew that we wanted to make No Man's Sky. At the time, that was called Project Skyscraper, because we wanted a big, ambitious name for it. But we always knew the type of game we wanted to make, and we'd known it before we even started Hello Games, and we had talked about it at that point. And we knew that Joe Danger was going to be a stepping stone towards that. It really kind of properly started a year and a half ago. It's not quite a year and a half ago, like a year and 5 months or something. And that was when 4 of us, slightly different 4 to the 4 that had founded the company, just found a small room within that large office, and we actually just literally locked the door and had a separate entrance and stuff like that, and squirreled ourselves away. And we started working on a prototype for No Man's Sky. And we actually didn't show the rest of the team because we just wanted almost the pressure and the isolation, almost like it was a startup within this small studio that had to prove themselves. And so we worked for a year actually on that prototype, which then turned into something much bigger, which is what we first showed at the VGXs.
World premiere.
Christmas Eve, I got a text and then a call saying the office is starting to flood. This kind of space that we'd done up ourselves and everything that was kind of quite personal to us, I guess, was pretty much kind of wiped out within a few hours, basically. And we were back on our feet in a really crappy, lo-fi way. Within a couple of weeks, actually, we were set up, and that was definitely indie development in a microcosm. It was the highs of you've announced a game, people love it, you've been flooded, you're destitute, everything's gone, it's wiped out, go bankrupt. So yeah, it was a crazy couple of months, but man, my faith in the community, games, the community in general, was completely restored at that point, And times like this at E3, we've had so much positivity about the game, you just never see that, where people really get behind something in such a big way. And that's massively, massively meaningful to us and really fuels you. there is this thing that it's set in this infinite procedurally generated universe, but that's actually not why we're making the game. We're not making some sort of tech demo or something like that. We had the idea of making a game that felt true to the kind of sci-fi books that we'd grown up with, the kind of idea of that, the fantasy of that. And we wanted to deliver on that, and to do that we had to create the universe for you to explore, because that's the feeling that we wanted you to have for one of the first times in games to actually land on a planet and for nobody to know what was on that planet. Not the creator of the game, not anyone else, because no one else has ever been there before. Give everyone a spaceship, start them all on a different planet. Give them a working, living, breathing universe that has planets with ecology, that has space stations and fleets of freighters and military and police and different races and all of them interacting, and let players loose and let them decide the game that they want to play, because that's what's interesting to me. I'm really interested by things that are less descriptive, actually, and less, hard-coded about what way you have to play it, and that don't start with a tutorial and then just kind of land you in and let you off to make your own fun. Having said that, it isn't just like some sort of empty blank canvas. There is a lore to the universe, and there are decisions that we make based on that, and it has a personality. It is generally a pretty dangerous place to be, as it should be kind of for sci-fi. It isn't just some ambient utopia, right? You are always in danger. Actually, everyone starts on a different planet, but everyone starts on a different planet on the outside edge of the galaxy. And they all share that same galaxy. And for most people, they will try and make the journey to the center of the galaxy. And there's a reason why you would want to do that. But that is a journey that they will undertake, and to do that, they will need to upgrade their ship, upgrade their weapons, upgrade their suit, and they will need to plan, and they will need to cooperate with other players to an extent, and they will actually need to be quite clever. And there is a game beyond that, and you can continue to play. But for a lot of people, that's the core journey that they will be on. They will think, I started out with the smallest, crappiest ship you could imagine, and I got to a point where I could get to the center of the galaxy and see what was there. And we want that to be significant. The way the universe is created in No Man's Sky, the way everything is created, is this term that we use, procedural, right? And we're like really picky about that. We say it's not random, right? Because random to me is this like chaotic kind of mess, potentially. But procedural is like creating mathematical formulas, right? And they create a result. And the result is something that's like generated on the fly by the computer, but it's a result that hopefully looks correct, looks almost like it's been built by hand. So rather than planets just being randomly generated and us just picking, let's say, a color for a planet, right? One sky be red, and the next sky be blue, and the next sky be green, and the next sky be black, or whatever. We don't do that, because random generation like that results in like an entirely red planet with an entirely red sky and looks terrible, right? So we create algorithms that do things like decide if a planet is the right distance from the sun. And if it is, then it would have water. And so we generate water on that planet, and that creates rivers, and it creates lakes and oceans potentially. But then it also creates moisture in the atmosphere. Then that will affect the color of the sky, because the wavelength of the light is being diffracted in different ways to create different colors, just like in our world. As you fly around the world in No Man's Sky, you might encounter, say, a mountain, and on that mountain there might be a tree or a particular rock beside the tree, right? And that is there, and that mountain is there, and that tree is there on top of the mountain because there is effectively a mathematical formula, and the result of that formula will always be the same. So when you go and visit that mountain, you will always see that tree there. And if another player goes and visits that same mountain, they will see that exact same tree in the exact same place. But it's not stored on the disk, it's not stored in the cloud, it's just generated there and then on the fly. When you fly away, we just throw that data away. We throw away that mountain, we throw away that tree, but if you fly back, it will be there again, because it is just following this pattern.
So every time you go anywhere in No Man's Sky, you're essentially asking the game questions, math questions. And the beauty of math questions is the answer is always the same.
So when you put in the same inputs, which is just, I am here at this point in the world, you will always get the same output, which is the mountain in that exact same position, or the rock that's on top of that mountain, down to the blade of grass. It will always be in the exact same place. If another player comes along and they, input the same inputs, they will get the same output. We generate everything at different LODs, right? Which is like level of detail. And level of detail is that thing that gamers are used to. You drive around GTA and you will see a low detail building suddenly pop in and become a high detail building. Ours don't pop, but we generate the entire planet at quite a low level of detail. So when you look up and you see it kind of hanging there in the horizon, you can make out mountains and hills and canyons. And if you get into your ship and you fly into space and you fly towards that planet, as you get closer and closer to it, we will generate higher and higher detail. And as you come in to land on it, we begin to generate the highest levels of detail.
Pretty much everything you see, plants, trees, spaceships, and of course the wildlife too, is all unique. Each one is literally one of a kind in the entire universe. So each base piece in the world has the equivalent of little sliders for every characteristic.
Our artist might create a cat, and from that cat they will also be creating every type of lion and every type of tiger, but also things that are much more kind of wild and mutated from that. All of those creatures, all of the ships that you see in the sky and the freighters and things like that, they're all following what we would call a fractal pattern. So that means that creatures will go down to the water and drink some water and come back up to higher ground and perhaps eat some grass and go for a sleep or something like that. Some creatures will only come out at night, all of those sort of things. And they're just, again, following a mathematical formula. So we don't simulate them. And that means that if you're on a planet and you see a creature doing something like that, and then you fly away and you come back, it will be a little bit further along that pattern, basically. So I will make a rule that say there should be little flowers around the base of a tree, right? And I'll think that's a good rule. And then I propagate that to the main branch, and suddenly there are flowers around the base of every tree on every planet, right? And that's cool, except it has horrible knock-ons, right? And I realized that I'm an idiot, that I'm not a god, right? And this was a terrible rule. And suddenly all the creatures are going crazy and they're trying to eat around the base of trees and they're eating flowers and things like that. And so, yeah, you break the universe horribly because you have this ridiculous power. You've got loads of simple rules. They each has a cause and effect, but you find it impossible to predict what they're going to result in because there's a whole bunch of them. Even just with half a dozen rules, it suddenly becomes really hard to predict what's going to happen. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of like the planet that we showed at E3. I really like to kind of point out to people, I guess, that it's a real place, you know, it's a planet, and it's kind of rotating around the sun and stuff, and that like you can walk in any direction, and you can walk for days and days, and depending on the size of the planet, weeks and weeks, and you will eventually walk the whole way around the planet, you know, and come back to where you started. And I like that you're orbiting around the sun and stuff like that, and that you can look up in the sky and see that like there's actual features and things like that on the other planets that you can see, and that they're real places too, that you're in like a solar system. You know, it's kind of cool doing this on the E3 build, because a lot of people would have seen just the quick 3 minutes that we showed or whatever, but it wasn't some level that we built or something like that, even though I think it looks quite nice in places. You know, it's a procedurally generated world, and like you can look down into the caves and things. Like you can see an exit down there, and that like exit is, I can see it's in like the low lot, so it's like over 1 kilometer away, you know, and I can see down here this huge cave network, and I've never really been down there, but I know that when I've gone down there before, like just a little bit, it just goes on and on forever, and you can get totally lost. Oh no, it's just a place that looks nice. We don't have a particularly like big team, so we just focus on making sure that we get the most out of our build that we bring together or whatever. But we don't have to stay here. I can just go into flycam and I can like head out into space. And like you can see, it's real quick, and we've got a whole bunch of planets here and stuff like that around us. And I can just head down onto this other planet that we went down to. Not always. It was a really difficult thing to bring together a build to show on stage, because we had really limited time, you know. And I remember like Sony being a bit worried that we have this crazy ambitious game, but it's quite hard to boil down into a quick like soundbite of a trailer, if you know what I mean. So it was important that we chose planets that were really close together. But they are closer together generally in the game than you would find in real life in our universe. And that's a conscious decision that we've made. I was sort of against it to begin with. Grant, our artist, kind of won out because he was saying like, show me a piece of sci-fi concept art that doesn't have crescent planet hanging on the horizon. And I was like, I kind of couldn't find that piece of sci-fi concept. So it's like, fair enough. This is, you know, he was like, you said you wanted sci-fi book covers, that's sci-fi book covers. So planets are a little closer than they would be. That's both for like an aesthetic reason, but also for like gameplay reasons. The reality is you want things to just be maybe a little bit closer together so that you have that freedom to go and visit planets. Mm-hmm. You want to spend most of your time doing that rather than traveling. But it's only a little bit, actually. We have some planets that are like really, really far away, you know, and I like when that happens as well. It's just they tend to be a little bit closer on average. So yeah, the thing I was going to show you is kind of how these terrains are generated a little bit. So like I can fly over this terrain, and this is about the speed that you go at when you're flying in the ship kind of over the terrain. It's really fast, like surprisingly fast. You don't quite register it here because we're in like a debug cam and there's no camera shake or anything like that to give you any cues. But what's happening as we go around is you can see this slight amount of like, it's not popping, but you can see the world fading in. Mm-hmm. And what's happening is like it's actually being generated as I fly around. None of this exists on the like disk. None of it exists on the machine, like on your PS4 or whatever. None of it exists in the cloud. It's just generating from like a set of maths functions. Always generating the same way because it's maths. Like any maths formula, you take the same input and you put it into that math formula and you'll get the same output. And for our game, the formula like is really complex. Well, a series of really simple formulas actually laid on top of each other to create something quite complex, which is the universe. So that's our formula for like the universe and for the planets and everything else. And the input is your position. So you give it any position in that universe and it will create everything that you see around you. That's the output. So for instance, like there's no real loading time. All the time that you ever have, no matter where you go in the universe, is just the time it takes to generate the world around you. So I can actually like go much faster if I hold down the left trigger. I'm just in debug cam. I can go a lot faster, and you can see the player will never be able to go this fast, but you can see I start to outrun the world, right? But then if I stop, you'll see the world generate around me, and like that's to a real high level of detail. So I can like zoom down, right down to kind of a single rock, right? And then I can kind of like pop back up real quick, and I can be out in space and kind of take a look around. I don't know. Some people have done things a little bit like this. You know, no one's quite gone to this taken it this far before. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think one part of it is that like this is a kind of a next gen idea. So mostly as developers, we actually just use more and more powerful machines to just make more and more pretty graphics, basically. So we actually have the same games generation after generation, the same kind of first-person shooters, the same things happen in them, but generally we anti-alias them more or have more specular maps or whatever. And what we're doing is applying like an awful lot of the power of the hardware towards just generating the world around you, rather than it being a pre-baked thing that you load up off disk. And you need a pretty powerful machine to do that. That, I guess, is what's quite next-gen about it, you know. There's not that much that we're doing that like just hasn't been done. I just don't think it's been brought together before, you know. There's things that I'm super proud of that like we like, and this is where it gets a bit mathsy probably, but like we generate this world, and when we do, every pixel and every like actual voxel that makes up the world has to generate without knowing anything about its neighbors, right? We just have a formula that runs, and you give it an X, Y, and Z position, and it will create what's at that voxel at that exact point in time, kind of thing. And that makes it really hard to do things that need to know about their surroundings. So actually generating hills and mountains isn't too bad, but generating them to have like erosion or to have rivers or to have caves and things like that, you kind of need to know about the overall structure. So when you generate a cave, it's really hard to generate it if you can't know whether or not you're underground or whatever. So that's been one of the most kind of complicated problems actually to solve, and I think that's where we've been a little bit clever maybe. Well, we didn't set out to make a procedural game. We set out to make a kind of a sci-fi game, and to make a game where, you know, you could visit new planets and things like that. And that kind of necessitated this tech. Having said that, like, you know, whilst the game idea did come first and the tech is second, we're sort of a little bit in love with it, you know? Like, as in just procedural generation, it would be really hard to go back to like just making worlds by hand, making intricate levels and stuff. I wouldn't say never, but like one thing we found is it's so nice to be a small team but yet not be so constrained as like what we have been in the past maybe. So I think that's cool. So just to explain that a little bit further, as I fly around here, if we go into the tools, you can see this, which is actually the LOD, which is like level of detail, and that's being generated around us, right? And that's like the highest level of detail that's right around us, and you can see that that's got a series of like bars that's changing colors, right? They're little regions that are changing colors all around us, and that is those regions and those voxels kind of going from nothing to becoming voxels generated by the maths, then to becoming polygonized and having things like the grass that's going to live on them and the trees and the creatures generated and those kind of spawned and stuff like that. So it changes colors as you go through. But like as I go, you can see that that's happening like incredibly quickly. And that's sort of only possible with like these crazy multi-core next-gen machines kind of thing. And what's really exciting is like in future, this can be more detailed and more interesting, and that wouldn't require that much more work from us because the machine would be getting more powerful and we would be able to do more. No, I think we always will want real artistic input and stuff like that. Like that's super important. And like our art team, I think the game looks nice, and that's because of our art team rather than because of maths or anything like that. But I think right now, like you guys visit loads of different studios and you see teams of hundreds and hundreds, and you think, what are all these people doing? Generally, it's art. Generally, if you have 800 people on Assassin's Creed, an awful lot of those people will be making art, and you can see it as you walk around their worlds. They're incredible. But that's a real constraint. If you need 800 people to make a game, then you sort of can't do anything too crazy. You sort of need to say to them, it needs to be a bit like the last Assassin's Creed, but, you know, set in a different like time or something like that. So I think what it would be cool is if procedural generation, it didn't like take over or anything like that, but it helped solve some of those problems. So maybe you're a little bit less constrained. Well, we'll see if the game turns out good, and then people can make their minds up. So these are tools, like we wrote our own engine. You know, a lot of indie devs generally use like Unreal or use Unity or whatever. That wasn't really suitable for us. We wrote our own engine for Joe Danger. I've always written engines, so we sort of didn't think about it that much. But the procedural nature of things meant that we sort of had to do it ourselves. And so this is a set of tools. This is, like, I should say that really clearly. You'll never see these, like, playing the game. This is awful and horrible and debug, and I shouldn't be showing it in front of anyone. But it helps to explain how the game is made. So yeah, if I move real quick, you can see that we can start outrunning that generation a little bit. And then as soon as I slow down, it starts to come in. And there's a whole bunch of LODs, and this one's like the low level and has got like little rocks and things like that on it, you know, and then this will be the next level up and the next level after that. And that goes kind of right down to like the planet level. So even when you're playing the game normally and you're walking around the planet, that planet's been generated to the entire size of the planet, just at a low level of detail. So when you're stood on a mountain, you can stand on a really tall mountain and you'll be able to see like the curvature of the planet and be able to see effectively forever kind of thing. And if I like fly out into space, you'll see that those LODs get thrown away. It's sort of a shame, all that computation, we just throw it away. And then as soon as I fly back down, it'll all be regenerated again.
What sort of reaction from developers have you gotten towards this tech?
I don't know, we haven't shown other developers this stuff that much. I've had a few people who were working on like Star Wars games and things like that, and Star Trek games, who were trying to build huge expanses of alien planets by hand with hundreds of people, saying how it's quite difficult to see, you know, because you sort of think, oh, I just saw an entire alien world generated in like 15 seconds. Like, I don't know. I guess, like I said, next gen, maybe we're really clever or something, you know. No, I don't. I think I would say actually we're quite like stupid, and that's the reason that we've done this. Is I think like if we were to have sat down and thought it through, it would have seemed impossible and not a very good way to make a game. But we just started doing it. You know, I just started writing tech, and then it sort of worked, and then you find yourself I describe it as like being on a train, and you start like shoveling coal into that train, and it moves faster, faster and faster the more you put in. And so now we're like at breakneck speed, and there's no escaping that train basically. If we jump off, we'll be killed kind of thing. It's like this runaway train now. We're doing it. So that's actually true, that you hit problems and you think, oh my God, we'll never be able to solve this. And then you sort of think, well, we have to. So you do. Yeah, definitely. This is the hardest thing I've ever done. Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see when it comes out. Okay. So far. So the idea is that we generate the planets, in particular the planet kind of terrain and stuff, through a set of maths functions, right? And that defines every hill and rock and every river and everything like that you see, an overhang and what have you. And so this big 3D kind of maths function that runs. And the easiest way to explain it, I think, is to say, if you imagine a really simple maths function, so if you imagine a sine wave, right? That just kind of goes up and down, just like sine. And if you were to pick any point along that sine wave, you would know what height above or below the kind of origin line that should be, right? And sine wave kind of looks a little bit like mountains. It just goes up and down. And we do, much more complicated formulas than that. But effectively, you can have, a sine wave can go on forever. And, you don't have to actually store any information about it, kind of thing. So you just run it for a given X value, you can always have the Y value type of thing, right? And it will always come out the same. So if we had a planet that was just sine waves or whatever, and that was just generated from that, then you can imagine how two people could go to the same planet and find exactly the same thing, kind of thing. No, it's actually based on noise, which is properly random. It's just that the computer boots up and its random functions always return the same values for the same place. But sine is predictable by me through intuition. The game, because it's based on noise, is unpredictable to me by intuition, if you see what I mean. And it never repeats, whereas a sine wave will always repeat. So it's not just a distorted sine wave or anything like that, but it is a math formula. I guess that's the similarity type of thing. But if I just change this, I can actually feed in any maths formula, and it's quite fun. I use this for debugging purposes and stuff like that. I've got a series of different noise types that I can feed in there when I'm trying to find little bugs and things. So I can take this planet and I can change those values, and then I can just click regenerate. Then you can see that we have the planet of sine waves, the most boring maths planet in the world, right? But you get an idea of how that's possible, and I can kind of fly around these. This would be a really boring planet and will never exist in the game. It might be really nice if you wanted to go skiing or something like that, No, it's what I was explaining before about it not just being sine waves, it not just being a predictable maths function. It's what you'd call in maths terms chaotic. So changes have massive implications. So as we change things, and this happens to hilarious effect when we were trying to bring together a build to show off. So we're trying to do something for E3, and you're oh, I like it the way those deer come over that hill or whatever. And then Dave changes something that you would expect to be totally unrelated, something very small about ships or something. And suddenly the whole world has changed, and that hill no longer exists, and those deer no longer exist, And so you have these huge implications to tiny changes, basically. No, we're pretty gung-ho, because nobody knows what's changing, so nobody misses it, In terms of development, this is a weird thing to explain, but every person downstairs has a different universe on their machine, and when the game comes out, then we'll be locked on one universe type of thing, and we have a main server, which is what people check into, and that's the official universe. And when I want to go and take a build to VGX or E3, then we grab that version. But until then, it's pretty much in flux and a little bit crazy. Gotcha. Which is why sometimes it can be extremely challenging to bring together builds and stuff. Yeah. When you create an MMO, character for the first time, you have your set of sliders and you move them all and you use that to create your version of the character. Well, we sort of have that for everything in the game. So every tree, rock, piece of grass, creature, whatever. So the artist will build something like this. Actually, it won't be this one. You know, they'll build something that's just a prototype and they model it out in a thing called ZBrush, and you're basically just making things out of clay. So they don't so much model in polys and things like that, and they don't do texturing and things like that so much. And then they bring it into game, and they can click a button and it will show them hundreds of variants, and they can click it again, it'll show them hundreds more. And this will be just one creature type, and there will be hundreds of creature types in the game, but each one of them will have, you know, practically infinite number of variations. And it's not just creatures, it's everything. And even for a creature, what you don't get across when you see one is that they're different scales, and that actually changes their behaviors. So if you look at a lizard can be incredibly small and like not scary at all, but it also can be dinosaur size. And we change the proportions and everything like that of the bodies as we go through, so their rigs change. So something like a giraffe and a horse are actually the same species in our game, kind of thing. That's a coincidence. We think they're cool, for sure, but we've tried not to show super alien creatures because we think people, they can find it's hard to wrap their heads around that. It's a really surprising thing, but if you show underwater, but you show something that is swimming past but doesn't look like a fish and doesn't behave like a fish, then people actually find it hard to know that you're underwater anymore, and it can make for like a confusing demo. Once people are in the game, they will see stuff like that, and I think they'll accept it more. But at the moment, we didn't want to show things that couldn't exist on Earth, or that they don't have so many kind of like touch points for. But we also didn't want to just show things that look like lions and tigers and stuff like that. So we thought that kind of reptilian and prehistoric stuff looked best, you know, and got across what was possible within this generation without, you know, blowing people's minds too much. Yeah, that's possible, and that will happen actually more and more towards the center of the galaxy. But it's not just the creatures, it's things like ships and stuff as well. This is kind of the ship that we've showed off before. It's just a fighter, but you can view variants of it, and there's an infinite number of variations of that ship, which is a cool thing for players. Each one of them is pilotable, each one of them will handle slightly differently. When you have a ship, it feels a little bit like it's your own, you know, because it is pretty unique, and you're not gonna see 10 other people with the same ship. But even with the creatures, something that's fun for me is people generally, when they think of creatures, they only think of like four-legged creatures or whatever, or land creatures. I like that, you know, even our insects, and like you sometimes see butterflies and things like that, they're procedurally generated, you know, and you get little creatures running about, and that's just all color for me, like birds and stuff in the air. You get little tiny ones and huge big ones, and even like underwater. So this is like a fish type, and he's just kind of prototyped at the moment, but he's got a cool smile as well. But even those, you know, there's something uniquely fun about going underwater, sometimes going into like an underwater cave, and then just seeing something that you've never seen before pop out at you, or knowing that that might happen, is quite a cool thing. You would look at these and think, right, these are fish and variants of fish, but in an alien landscape, you don't really know that, actually. You know, one of those can go flying past, and that's fine, I think. Like, we don't necessarily put those constraints on how things will be. Yes, I kind of think this stuff is like, you know, not for public consumption, basically. I like things to look nice and be finished and stuff, and I can't bear not to see that generally, you know. Whether, like, you know, there's certain things that you, like, you know, you don't have control over and stuff, but generally I'm kind of very close to the screen when I'm playing the game, kind of thing. I think it might be nice for people to see like small teams doing stuff, you know, like I think Notch is a big inspiration to people, and like he should be, you know, like there's something nice if you're like at home and you're thinking of getting into developing. It's kind of daunting to see like the Watch Dogs team or the Assassin's Creed team or whatever. I think that's difficult to kind of think, oh, there's 800 people making that game. Where would I fit into that? It's quite nice to think, oh, you can actually still do something yourself or with a few friends or whatever. I always think that's good. Like that was a big thing for me growing up, was like actually id were huge for me when I was thinking of getting into games. Just thinking they seemed like a small team and they seemed to be having a lot of fun and seemed to like, be doing amazing things. And that was a really big deal for me. I think the personality did come through in the games, like, but I read a lot about them at the time, and like now we have like very kind of whitewashed, often quite boring developer diaries and stuff, that just stay on message and just like pump out like a PR message or whatever. But then when those guys used to talk about the games, or you would read like change logs and stuff like that, even they had like a lot of personality and stuff, and that was really nice because you thought they're normal human beings, so maybe I'm a normal human being, maybe I can do something. Although I did always think Carmack was like not normal and human, like in that he was amazing. Without sounding too pretentious, I think it does. You look up at like the night sky and you typically see a few thousand stars or whatever. And that seems like an awful lot, and it kind of makes you feel a little bit small. But what you don't realize is that when you're looking up, there are galaxies worth of stars, hundreds of millions of billions of stars over your head, and if you could see that, you would, I don't even know, I think you probably either couldn't worry about anything ever again, because you would just think, what is the point, nothing's a big deal, or you just kind of dismay and think, oh, what is the point in anything? How small am I and insignificant? But like, you don't see that many stars and you don't have a sense of how small you are often. And like a weird thing, like doing stuff like us making the even the galactic map and working on that, it sounds cheesy, but there are moments that I've thought, wow, because it's like a visual representation of to some degree how big our own galaxy is, and it's kind of incredible, you get that from like watching loads of shows like Cosmos and stuff like that, but it's weird to see it in a game and to kind of feel that way. Often in games feel surprisingly constrained, so like, and we're used to that. We're used to walking up to doors and them not opening and things like that. And actually, like say Mass Effect, we're used to viewing a whole galaxy map and there being like 3 things selectable or whatever. And it's like, when you take those constraints off, it's sort of a little bit daunting. You're like, where do I even start? We've had like a few like chemists and physicists and stuff get in contact, just being super excited about it, and like, we haven't had time. We've had like people like exobiologists and stuff like that get in contact, and they'll often send like super interesting links and things like that have informed the game a little bit. But in general, the really nice thing that they've said is like they'd like to use it when the game comes out, like as a tool, just to show people, just to demonstrate certain things that kind of make something that might be considered a little bit boring, like a little bit more interesting or whatever. Just when you actually are able to walk around somewhere alien, it's a bit more interesting than just talking about, a certain star cluster or something like that. Yeah, I think there's like a series of things that are, for me actually, like, it's made things. I never liked geography when I was going to school, You know, and we would do about like tectonic plates and erosion and things like that. It's made that super interesting for me. Just like how shapes form. You know, that's a big part of what we do, like how canyons and rivers and caves and things, we have to think about that kind of stuff because we can't just build them. Like I said, we've only done this because we're stupid enough to do it, so we can get our PhD in that. Like blatant stupidity. Oh no, I won't. Like I'll never. I would. That would be the worst thing if this game burnt me out from like sci-fi. I'll never have that, I don't think. I made Burnout for years, and like I was never that into cars. I remember lying in the interview being like, oh, I love cars, I don't love cars. But I love sci-fi. I don't think that's going away. And it's made me, if anything, like more into it. But I think, you know, as to what we do next, I'd really like to see us. I like the game to be popular and that we'd get to work on it more even after it comes out. Mm-hmm. You know, that would be nice. That's how I feel at the moment, at least. No, I think that's cool. Hopefully it's like, yeah, I know it's been really rambly and
no,
like I'm not,
perfect.
it's a hard thing to like talk about. I'm very aware that it's, you know, geeky, techie stuff and it's not really the game, you know what I mean? Like Sony have been really good to work with. You know, I have like nothing but good things to say about them. But Hello Games is still like an independent studio, and day to day we just run as normal. You know, like Shuhei isn't in our office every day or anything like that. You know, but when we do meet them, they're lovely. What they've allowed us the opportunity to do so far is be on stage at E3, be here at PSX, and show the game off to an audience that we never would have hit otherwise, you know, that we never would have reached. And like, that's incredibly significant to us, because most people think that, you know, No Man's Sky has a good level of interest around it for an indie game, and that people seem excited about it. But the truth is, like, that is only because we've been able to show it to people, you know. And I've worked on games before, and I know how small Hello Games' voice is. Like on its own, it's just this tiny little whisper. And so we rely hugely on things like you know, showing up at things like VGX or PSX or E3 or the TGAs or whatever it is. You know, that is like, those things have been like genuinely life-changing for us, you know, like, and we would be actually still making this game, but it would be a lot more, you know, niche than what it is now, for sure. Yeah, I mean, we've showed off that there's combat in space before, and like that's a really significant part of the game. Like, even if you want to play as a pacifist, you're going to find that difficult because you'll be attacked, you know. You can't necessarily just avoid it. For a lot of people, they'll want to be a combatant. They will go and attack people. They'll be pirates or whatever, or attack space stations, which is a really silly thing to do, but that's the kind of thing that people will do. And you know, that for some people will be the game, you know. And there are lots of games that are only that, than just space combat. And for a lot of people, that's how they'll play it, and that will be their experience. For other people, they will be traders, for instance, and they will be either gathering resources and bringing them to space stations or trading posts to kind of sell them, or they'll be trading between space stations and between trading posts. You know, they will still probably need to defend themselves, so they'll be upgrading their ship to have better cargo, to have better weapons, things like that. Other people will be explorers, you know, and they will be exploring space itself, you know, and finding new like solar systems and finding new like planets and things like that, but also the features of those planets. So if there's a trading post on a planet, then you know you can discover that. You can discover the tallest mountains, the deepest oceans. You can name them, all the creatures that are on the planet. You know, that is another role that people might take as an explorer. But that sounds like ambient, you know. That sounds kind of like you just wander about, but actually you're quite vulnerable the whole time in space, but also on the planets. There's an ecology on all the planets, and you know, you're not necessarily at the top of the food chain. You know, and there is a kind of a thing that we haven't talked about that much, but like a malevolent force that we have like dotted across the galaxy, that will, you know, bring combat your way on the ground. You know, so you have a weapon that we haven't really shown. You have, you know, combat on planets and things like that. That for some people will be a tiny part of the game, for other people will be all they do. I am Sean from Hello Games, working on No Man's Sky. Yeah, I think I can trace it back, like, I can trace the idea back quite a long ways, actually. Like, back so far that I don't think it was ever something that I felt like, oh, I'm gonna make this game. It's more like, as a kid, I was thinking, I want to play a game like this, you know. I grew up playing, like, Elite, and reading a lot of sci-fi and things like that, and it just seemed like sort of an obvious idea that you would want to have a game where you could just go anywhere, to have a space game. Anyone who has played any space game has always seen the kind of planets on the skybox, and as a kid you think, right, I'll just go over there and land on it, and you can't, you know, and what is that? And then, you know, slowly you get used to that, I think. As gamers, we're super used to, like, I think, seeing doors that you know you can't open, or seeing mountains and know, well, you'll never be able to actually go there, or whatever, you know. We're super used to that. Somebody said to me, No Man's Sky seemed like the game design of like a child, you know, and I think that's kind of true, because it does sound ridiculous. Get into your ship, you fly anywhere, do anything, you can, you know, charge about the whole galaxy, but that is the root of it for me, you know. And since we've announced, like, I've just had so many people say, oh, you know, like, this is a game I was thinking about when I was a kid, or whatever. So that's a really nice feeling, and I think that resonance is something I did not expect. It's kind of taken me by surprise, I guess. Yeah, I think it's a weird thing. Like, I think a larger studio would never try and make this game. You know, like, it would never get past the kind of pitch stage, because it's too big, and already you're talking about, you know, needing teams of hundreds of people to make Watch Dogs or something like that, and then you try and scale that up larger and larger, you know, to have a whole planet or whatever. You know, sure, it's a different level of detail to Watch Dogs or anything like that, but just as a concept, it seems like stupidly big kind of thing. And I think that's the core of it for me, like why it hasn't been made before, maybe, is you probably only could convince a small team to do it, you know, and you also have to be quite, like, sort of stupid to take it on, you know, like a mixture of maybe clever and stupid. So yeah, maybe there just hasn't been a small team, like, stupid enough before. Yeah, I think to begin with, we had the idea for the game, and we'd been talking about it for years. We made some smaller games before this. We made a game called Joe Danger, and while we were working on that, we were always talking about this idea, this kind of science fiction game that we wanted to make. And the idea came first, and the idea was, imagine being able to, you know, be a pilot and fly a spaceship and land on a planet, and for no one to know what was on that planet, to have no one to have been there before, you know. And that's like a cool concept, and it's the core of what like sci-fi is to me, that kind of emotion. So we started there, and we were like, that's what we want to get across. But then it's obvious that we couldn't build that, you know. So the idea came first, and then the tech kind of came second, which was like, what technology can we make? How do we make this possible? And so we were like really quickly focused on like procedurally generating stuff. That's really been the key to it for us, that using the power of the like computer to build stuff, to generate stuff, and then that content problem kind of sort of goes away, you know. Yeah, well, we're creating this universe, and it's large, you know. We say it's practically kind of infinite, you know, practically limitless, and we have this idea that like when you're on a planet, you can go and see a mountain on the horizon, and that's a real place, and you can go and climb it. And then when you're on the mountain, you can see another planet hanging in the horizon, and that's a real place, and get in a ship and you can go there. And on your way, I guess the thing we always said was like the night sky, the space sky that you see wouldn't be a sky dome, it would be, you know, formed from actual stars, the light of like distant suns, and each one of those would have its own solar system, you know. And that, to begin with, that was where we started. We said like, you want to be able to look up at the night sky and just see, you know, thousands of stars, right? Like, you know, if you look up into our night sky, you can make out about 2,000 to 10,000 or whatever. And all of those to be real places. And that's where we started, which is really large scope, but is smaller than where we are now. So we started with that idea, which was like, you know, about 2,000 to 10,000 suns. And then we kind of found what was possible with the technology, and we said, well, why have that constraint? So we moved to this system where we could randomly generate things from seeds, and each planet that's generated kind of has like a phone number, a unique identifier, right? And the size of that number was like, to begin with, was like 2 to the power of 32, right? Which is really big. And it means that like that number of planets, if you were to discover one every second, it would take you like years to discover them all, like thousands of years kind of thing. And so that seemed like, you know, even more crazily big and about right. We said like, if you discovered one every second, it's going to take thousands of years. That's like going back to, you know, Roman times or something like that, and then playing all the way. And then we had E3 and things like that, and the game seemed to be going down well, and we maybe lost the run of ourselves and like hubris or something. We started having this conversation, which was like, yeah, but what if like millions of people play this game, you know? So, you know, and they're all discovering planets as quickly, and, you know, perhaps they'll start seeing similarities or you know, ones being, you know, landing on ones they've already been discovered, and they'll run out of planets and all this kind of thing. So we were like, let's make it bigger. So it's now like 2 to the power of like 64, right? So that's a really big number. It's like exponentially big. So, you know, that's like, if you were to discover one every second, it would take like 584 billion years or something to discover them all, right? So like, we feel like that's probably enough. We're close enough then to just call it infinite, you know? Like, because, you know, if someone's going to prove us wrong, like, that it's not infinite, it's going to, like, not only will I be dead and everyone else will be as well, and our, you know, Earth will be consumed by the sun, and the sun will be dead, and yeah. So I think we're okay to just say, you know, limitless or infinite or something like that. I think, there's nothing to me more kind of futuristic than like wearing a VR helmet and like being able to explore a universe, and we're always in first person. So we're about kind of exploring spaces. And so in some ways it's like an excellent fit, and we have kind of messed about with that type of stuff and seen what it looks like. But we're not, I guess we're not there yet in terms of announcing anything or anything like that. But I think it could be a really interesting thing for VR, and it could be a really interesting thing for No Man's Sky. Like, I guess we're just a super small team, and I think most people want us to just focus on the game right now. Yeah, it's been a really interesting journey, and it when I say this, it will sound like almost too perfect, and so you won't believe that it happened this way round, but it's just how it is. Like 65 Days with this band that I've always been into, and are genuinely like one of, if not my favorite band kind of thing. And we've always played them in the office quite a bit. But towards the beginning of the game, normally if I'm trying to pitch an idea to the guys, I will play some music and I'll be explaining the game, and it sounds enormously cheesy, and it is. And I'll normally have some little props and things like that. So I remember with Joe Danger, I was mocking things out with a little toy motorbike, basically. And at the time for Joe Danger, I was playing the music that ended up being the music in the game, kind of thing. And similarly with this, I was talking to the guys about the game and playing music, and it's this really powerful tool to be able to say, imagine a game set to this music, right? And then you start talking about it being a science fiction game and stuff like that, and it just says a lot in very little, really helps to help people visualize. And so then we stuck with that. Four of us kind of got together in a little room and started prototyping No Man's Sky, and for that first year, every Friday we would have a review, and we would normally be looking at something hilariously terrible, right? Just a cube flying about on screen or whatever. But every Friday we'd always put this playlist on that ended up being the music that we used on our trailers, and we would listen to it over and over. And the rest of the team were in another room next door, and they were sick of this track. But we would play it and kind of do our little review, and it made what we were doing seem more significant, or you could kind of picture it a bit more. It kind of filled in some little blanks. So that stayed going for ages, and then when it came to us doing the VGXs last year and announcing, I reached out to them. I mailed them, and they were on tour in the States, and they got this mail and asking to use their track on a trailer, and they're quite, I guess, understandably, obviously, precious about what their music gets used on. A lot of bands aren't like that. We've licensed music before and never had any kind of approval process or anything, but they were instantly we're interested, but you've got to send us screenshots of the game, and we want to see what the art style is and things like that, which is actually quite strange for a band to do that. But it was lucky, because when they saw it, they were in love with it, and said, oh, this is perfect for us. This is the perfect aesthetic for us. And so instantly we started talking about whether we could collaborate, maybe get their help to do a soundtrack. But then they started talking about doing a soundtrack album, and they said, can you get us just a few hours of footage of the game, and then we'll kind of write music to that. And I was wow, it's really difficult, because I can get you some of the game, but it won't be representative of everything that people will see, And so we started talking about different ways to make the music work. So they're right now writing a new album, and that new album will be like the No Man's Sky album, and there'll be a bunch of tracks on it, right? And those tracks will get played in game at like really significant points, like maybe the first time you get in your ship and fly out into space. It might play one of those tracks in full. There are like key moments like that throughout the game, but the rest of the time we're going to dismantle that album, break it up into little bits, into like literally into like chords and instruments and things, and then play it back generatively to create a kind of a soundscape, you know, that will be different all the time, and it will be different on different planets, and it will be different kind of throughout. It will be like background music. You're not going to suddenly hear like you know, a new song with vocals and things like that. You know, it's meant to be the ambient soundscape of the game, and it's what you will hear when you're not hearing those kind of larger, bigger moment tracks. But it should feel like, 65 days, hopefully, soundtracking the game. That's what we're after, and it should feel unique. It's not actually important to us that it always sounds different for different players. It's nice that it does, you know. What's important is just that it matches what's going on. So it'll be fed from things like little parameters, like it'll be fed from, how mutated a planet is, whether it's dangerous, whether it's life on it, things like that. Those things key in to kind of create the music, basically. So we were actually going to announce a release date at E3, but for reasons we can't. We'll announce the release date soon, and when we announce that release date, it will be for PS4 and PC at the same time. There's about 10 of us. Well, you have to do a lot of like normal human playtesting, but we talked about this a little bit before, that we actually have effectively bots. We run a server, and these AI bots, they go and visit planets, and they actually record little animated GIFs, and they keep track of memory usage and frame rate and things like that. So we send out our little AI drone spiders, and they, come back from the cosmos telling us how things are going and how the game's shaping up, basically. Somebody said that to me. It sounds like a game design of like a child, basically. Yeah. And I don't know how to take that. I guess, probably that's true. I think, we grew up playing games like Elite, stuff like that, and I guess this was the game, for me at least, that I imagined at the time, and actually there were a lot more games, they were a lot more open like that in those kind of like Commodore 64 days and like early PC days. They were a lot more freer, open, and kind of, almost wild. Like I remember you would get your keyboard and you would have no idea what anything did, and you would press all the buttons on it, and that's how you discover it. Right, exactly. And so nobody's really tried games like this so much since then. I mean, I think there has been a wave of them, like on PC recently, right? Especially in early access, things that are more kind of open, more sandboxy and stuff like that. And that's definitely where we kind of place ourselves. I'm not sure that's arrived yet. No, I think we grow more and more in confidence, like in what we're doing. But this E3 is kind of when we've been showing people, going on hands-on, and even kind of last night at the Sony press conference, just playing it live and showing people how it is. It's a weird feeling to work on a game that so many people say, I'm not sure if it's real and things like that, because of course you know that it is. You're playing it every day and stuff like that. So it's odd. It is ambitious in some ways, but in other ways, it's not. It's perfectly doable by a small team because we're using the computer to generate everything rather than trying to generate everything ourselves.
Hi guys. So last year, I stood here and we showed you a video of this crazy game we're making called No Man's Sky. This year, I guess I really just wanted to show you how it plays. So this is a giant sandbox that we're making, a universe-sized sandbox. It's full of choices. Like here, we're at the boundary between two warring factions. I could join in, I could take sides. So that's a tiny glimpse of space combat, but I've only got 3 minutes, and there's loads that I want to show you. Like this. So this is the solar system that we're currently at. That's where that battle is taking place, but battles like that are taking place across the universe. If I pull back a little bit, you could see the other stars nearby that I can reach with my current hyperdrive. And I'm going to pull back a little bit more to give you a sense of the size of the game. But when I do, I really need you to keep in mind, to understand that every one of these points of light is a sun. And every one of those suns has its own solar system with planet-sized planets orbiting around it. Those have life, ecology. And I could even go a little faster. Now, most of these places have never been visited. Many of them never will be. Over there, in the distance, is the center of the galaxy. That's where we're all trying to get to. And now I'm going to do something really stupid. I'm just going to pick one of these at random. And we can go there. Now this was okay in rehearsal, otherwise I wouldn't be here, but if anything horrible goes wrong, just keep in mind that I've not been here before. Cool. So here we are in an undiscovered solar system. Probably no one's ever been here before. I can do a scan. And when I do, you'll see some points of interest. That red one down there is a beacon. And I've made it so that there's always a beacon near where I warp in just for this. So beacons are where you upload discoveries. That's it over there, behind that rock. And this is the planet that we've just found. So this is an alien world that we found together. This is planet E3. And it's not like the prettiest planet. I've seen better, but I've also seen a lot worse. So I could do a scan, and as luck would have it, there's no alien life. But I could show you this. So every planet in every solar system is fully destructible. Those guys are the Sentinels. They protect the planets from explorers like me. Oh. And now I'm underwater. And there's fish. There's some E3 fish. Cool. So now I need to find that beacon. And I can upload those discoveries. So now, when the game is out, and we'll announce a release date soon, I promise. When the game is out, one of you might one day come across this planet. And that's just a little glimpse of No Man's Sky. It's got trading, fighting, exploring, survival, and it's a huge game. Thank you.
Well, I dropped off Twitter and things like that, which doesn't sound like a big deal. I wasn't the biggest Twitter user anyway, you know. And just kind of, we didn't post anything. We turned down loads of press and stuff. Like there was just loads of interest around the game, and we could actually have done press every day and then just not get any of the game done. So that was one reason. Just wanted to get our heads down. Another reason was, I suppose a lot of people said there was a lot of like hype around the game. Yeah. And that's a weird feeling as a developer, actually. You'd think it would be a good thing. Because like you want people to be excited about your game, you know? It's a scary thing, yeah. But then I suppose probably a bigger thing was I just said personally, I just didn't want, I wasn't getting anything from it. I didn't want to do any press, you know, and we were booked to go to like GDC and DICE and stuff like that and do talks, and I just said like to the rest of the guys, you can do it, but I just don't want to. I suppose just at a really personal level, it sounds really selfish, like I just don't enjoy it. I think like E3 for us now is showing like that we think it's really coming together, you know. I was actually going to say that on stage, and they said, "Don't say that. That sounds bad." You know, like you know. But that's what it felt like for me. You know, we'd showed videos before, and those videos were a fair reflection. You know, but I don't think people realize how impressive it is to be able to just stand there and pick any star at random, and just go there and say, "It might not be perfect, but like." I'm happy enough to show this kind of thing. You know, the hype thing is like, we could have done a very staged demo. Yeah. But all I felt that would do is like increase hype, you know, and I wanted to just show something that was more real. So like, to me, that demo was sort of boring. Because basically you just pick a planet and you go there, you land, and like you go up to a beacon, and you know, almost you could see no one even knew whether it was over. Yeah. You kind of just put that. I guess we stopped there, back away from it, like about a time.
As opposed to showing like 5 minutes of space battles and everything else.
Well, like I was joking before today about like every demo, pretty much on all the conferences so far, 50% of them end with like a monster coming out, screaming, you know, like and then it cuts, you know, fade to black.
And yours ended with
or whatever.
E3 fish and uploading some coordinates.
Exactly. It sounds pretty bad when you put it like that. Yeah, and a kind of a, and we'll leave it there, I guess. You know?
So what else could have happened? What in like all the other universes we live in, you know, all the other universes that exist
so
that we can't see?
We saw the things in rehearsal, like, you know, where I would land. I was hoping that I would land and there would be lots of creatures there, and then I could talk about that a bit. The backup to that was like, if there's nothing there and it's a more barren planet, I'll just like mine some resources, show that the planet's destructible and stuff. So that was kind of what we went with. You know, you just have to kind of roll with it. The ideal is like that you do land and there's some crazy big creature or something like that there, and you can kind of show that off, kind of like that huge dinosaur you saw in like the
Yeah.
previous E3 demo. But then if that had happened, probably everyone would have said it was staged, so
Yeah,
it's fine.
good point.
Yeah, like, we're nothing like GTA,
Yeah.
right? But it's the easiest way I have to explain it. Like, you know how if you play GTA and you go to a rival gang's region, they'll instantly just start attacking you.
Yeah.
You know? If you start attacking some pedestrians, then the police will have a reaction, you know? And so we have a similar kind of system. People might have noticed it, that there's like a wanted level up in the top right-hand corner. So if you start attacking innocents, so you start attacking traders or freighters, then the police will have a reaction to that and start chasing you. If you attack police who are just on patrol or military, then similar thing will happen. With regards to factions, they're battling anyway. That goes on whether you're there or not.
Yeah.
You could just choose to join in. If you attack one particular faction, then they're going to remember that, and they might shoot first next time. If you decide to instead kind of protect freighters from like pirates and things like that, but it's not really missions.
Yeah.
It's like if you imagine GTA, but you don't do any of the missions and you just interact with the world, that's kind of what we're after, like an action sandbox. Like, yeah, absolutely. Like, and the more we do these shows, the more we probably ruin it for people. Like, but you know, we try to hold a little bit back at least, or I don't know, or not to over-explain it. Like Minecraft. Like, the coolest thing about Minecraft was that they didn't tell you, you know, what the crafting recipes were. And I don't know whether I would have had the nerve for that to release a game without doing that, but it's so cool, you know. And some people will just go and create wikis, and you know, some people will go and read wikis, and some people will just want to find it out for themselves. And we have similar kind of elements. We actually have crafting in the game as well. You know, we have like these ways that you interact. Like I'm talking about police or military, even things like that aren't made super obvious to you. You just see how they're interacting and you follow it from there, kind of thing.
So-
and
and
that's
the
the
wider
idea.
world.
All the systems have to work and create like nice game loops, kind of like so many games, particularly on PC at the moment, like say like Stranded Deep or Salt or you know, Terraria or Starbound. Those kind of games like have that system where they just have, here is a set of rules, here's a world, go out and play it how you want. And it's, you know, it is very different and it confuses people a bit. You know, and it is hard to talk about a game like that before it comes out. Normally those games just come out.
Yeah.
You know, and they're found on early access and people figure them out as they go along. And it fires us up to make it. You know, when I'm saying I don't want to do press, it's not because we aren't happy that people are excited about the game. Of course we are, you know.
Well, it's like that's a continuing sort of problem with games coverage as well. I saw a really good talk at GDC a couple of years ago about that from the guys who made Frog Fractions.
Oh, yeah,
About
yeah.
trying to keep wonder, because when we grew up, you know, playing Commodore games, like you like in Mortal Kombat, you're wondering, like somebody said, oh, if you do such and such, like Spider-Man turns up, and like, who knows? Like maybe it was possible. And one of the areas I remember we talked about last year when we did the video series on GameSpot was how this world, how it's one big world. And obviously, like, you probably don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of that either, but like the idea that you could find this planet and then somebody else might run into it. Like now everyone's going to be looking for the E3 planet. But this is a world where you can play with others, but is it sort of you're playing with them in that you're noticing where they've been rather than you're like actually dogfighting alongside other humans?
Yeah, like we're very careful about saying that. Like, this is not, if you're expecting a deathmatch game or an MMO, this is not what this is. You know, it's like Journey. You know, Journey has a lovely multiplayer component to it, but you would never say Journey's a great. Like, let's all sit down on Friday with a few beers and play Journey. You know, it's just not that kind of game, and that'll be the same for No Man's Sky. You know? No, I'm like really proud of the guys that we haven't done that. That like all this, you know, interest and hype and things like that. We've just kind of kept focused, and that's why, like, people. Somebody said to me, like, you know, it's like 3 years since you announced that game, but when are you going to release it? It's like, you know, it was about a year and a half ago, like, and we've only showed it, like, we showed it the first time at VGX, then E3, then kind of PSX, and now again, you know, whereas most games, you know that from the kind of
Oh, yeah.
cycle. You're seeing them at every PAX,
couple of
GDC.
weeks.
Yeah, we have. We showed Joe Danger way more. No one paid any attention. No, like I was saying it to Grant, who I work with, just before E3, before the press conference, there was like new screenshots from No Man's Sky leaked, and it went on all the websites, and I was like, where were these guys for Joe Danger? You know, no one ever leaked a Joe Danger screenshots, but somebody pick up on it.
Yeah.
So we can't complain about that. Like, that makes it way easier, and we're not on the show floor just trying to drum people in and stuff, and that allows us to actually focus on development, and we need to, because we're big, insane in the type of game that we're trying to. So we're not saying year and things like that. We really wanted to announce a release date, and like, it's really hard to explain. Like, most people will think they're used to somebody much more important sitting here talking about a much more important game, and they'll say, you know, they'll have a real clever press plan.
Yeah.
You know, like we want the game to be out. You know, like if we thought it was good enough, we would release it. If we thought it was finished, we would release it. You know, we just have to make sure that it is. We were going to announce a release date. There's reasons why we began to realize that it might not be accurate.
Okay.
You know, some reasons outside of our control, and I just don't want the pressure of that, to be honest. Like what I would create by, you know, you actually create people being upset with you.
Yeah.
You know, for announcing a release date and then changing it. It's the worst thing. It's like saying Christmas is the 25th of December and then changing it. Like, you know, actually no, we'll have Christmas a little bit later this year. You know, I'm like personally just gonna try and limit it as much as humanly possible. I know that sounds bad again, but like, I don't think it actually does anyone any good. It's not a bad thing to say at E3, you know, like, as in, you know, if people are excited about the game and they tell me, I actually feel bad. I just feel like, you know,
feel like you have a weight on your shoulders almost?
Well, it's not out yet, and it's like, get excited about it when it's out. You know? Is that bad to say? Like, you know, you want people to know about the game and stuff, and so that it is important to do this kind of thing. But right now, we feel we probably have what we need, in that we have people who will at least read a review and see whether the game's any good, you know? And if we've got that, then we're kind of happy enough, and we just need to deliver it for them.
Awesome. Last question, because I know you're a very, very busy man. It must have been cool to be able to go on the PC gaming show and say, yeah, you know what, this is actually coming out for PC as well.
Yeah, that was really nice. You know, it's a thing we've known for a while, and like, Sony have been really supportive of it, actually. You know, which is nice. I mean, you can see that with a bunch of other games that they're doing with Street Fighter and stuff like that. And we always assumed it would be a problem, but actually they've been quite good about it, you know.
And do you know whether or not, like, it'll be day and date on both platforms? Or
As close as we humanly possibly can, you know.
Yeah, so we're here just on a totally normal planet. It's not like I'm trying to show you anything in particular.
Right.
This is pretty average No Man's Sky action, basically.
Okay.
It's not like there's some crazy creature that I want to show you or something like that. And I guess that's what we've been trying to show at E3, is you know, just giving people a flavor of, like, this is the game as it is. This is your kind of average 5-10 minutes with the game. So I have a jetpack there, that's what I was using, which I can use to kind of fly about.
That's a weird looking fish.
Yeah, so we were kind of trying to show people, I guess, and trying to show you guys some of the things that you might do in the game, right? Like, there's lots that you can do, but I'll give you some idea of some of the roles that you might have. So for instance, we saw some weird looking fish over there. So if we can find them again, then we can scan them.
There they are.
And we've now discovered those, right? So that was really easy, right? But they're not particularly rare fish. So actually that discovery isn't worth that much, okay? But it's worth something. So if I go to a beacon, which would be like the red marker over there, which is way in the distance actually, or there's another one up there. If I go to that, jetpack over there, say, then I can upload that discovery. I can name it, right? And I'll get some money for doing that. So if you look in the top left-hand corner, over on the left-hand side of the screen, you've got a number and then a little U symbol, and that's the number of units that you have. So that's your currency in No Man's Sky.
Got it. Okay.
And you use units to buy new ships, buy new weapons, right? The ships and the weapons are procedurally generated as well, so there's like literally hundreds of thousands of different kind of variants of ship and weapon that you can discover, right?
Your ship there looks pretty cool already, but what is that, a low-level ship? Is that a high-level ship?
So this is probably a low-level fighter ship, I would say. It's actually got a really good cargo space, but not great weapons.
Got it.
So if I discover a planet or I discover a creature, something like that, then I can upload it. I'll get some money for that, and depending on how hostile the planet was, how hard it was to find, or the same goes for a creature, then I'll get varying amounts of money for that, right? When I do, I name it, I'm uploading it to this Atlas, which is a central computer.
Got
right,
it.
That
all players can access that?
That all players can access. So something was just attacking me there, and that's this little ghost.
Right. What's his problem?
Doesn't he know
What's his problem?
Doesn't he know I'm trying to demo?
You're just a nice explorer. You're not doing
So
anything.
if I
oh
don't-
my goodness.
If I don't want to kill him, I can shoot at the ground. I can kill him if you want.
Well, I guess you offered, so he's got to die.
So that's another way you can play the game. You can just, not come in peace, and you can kill all the creatures, right? But when you do, you'll find that people don't like you so
that
much.
one's smart. He ran away.
He's running away now because I have shot some creatures, and they do remember that. But it's drawn some attention. So
Right.
this is the Sentinel, and he saw me doing it. And you can see in the top right-hand corner of the screen, I've got a wanted level.
That's what that is. Okay.
So now I've got a 2-star wanted level.
You are really pissing this planet off, Sean.
So basically, from all over the planet, these Sentinels will now start making their way towards me.
And how can we get rid of the wanted level?
So by evading them, so I could fly out into space.
A
and
little
just
Grand Theft
hide.
Auto-esque in that regard.
Yeah, luckily
Play
they
low.
haven't patented that particular mechanic, so we can steal it. No, it makes sense. Basically, this universe has rules.
Yeah.
Actually, these Sentinels are a race of self-replicating robots, right?
You totally violated the Prime Directive on this
Yeah.
planet.
So they are now getting a bit more troublesome, and I'm probably not going to survive for very long.
So, and this is all, none of this had to happen.
It started with a goat.
It's all my fault.
You made that choice.
This is 100%
And
my fault.
It escalated quickly,
It
right?
sure did. It sure did. So, all right, we've respawned. Is there a penalty for
Yeah.
death, or in the sense of?
So the discoveries I've made, the resources I've gathered that I haven't uploaded, or the resources that I haven't stowed or sold on, they're gone now.
What? It's really hard to listen to you because I just keep looking around.
I don't want to hear that right now. That it's really hard to listen to me.
My eye just keeps being caught by other interesting things going on the screen because it's what everyone is really
Let's
latched
avoid
onto.
the goat this time.
What everyone is latched onto with No Man's Sky is the sense of discovery.
I'm going to
Sean.
shoot the ground, and he'll get
All
scared.
right, he's going to get. All right, so he's
So let's
gone.
do something a bit more chilled out.
Let's do it.
Mine some resources.
Okay.
So you can see that when I mine some resources, I get
The scientific.
symbols underneath. So we have our own periodic table
Nice.
in No Man's Sky. So we could have used the real world one, but we were worried people would learn something. So
We can't do that in a video game.
no, I know. So we had to create our own. No, it's our own kind of sci-fi version of the real world periodic table, right? So just like the periodic table, you can combine elements. So I can mine these elements and I can combine them, and that will create kind of new, new alloys. And actually, I can sell them on for more money, basically. Because all of these things that I mine, I can sell. I can sell them at trading posts like this one, so you can see other traders doing the same. And these would be other AI.
Right.
Potentially, they could be other players. So they're landing there and dropping off their goods. Go away, guys.
Damn it,
Run
go.
away. There you go.
Scare him off. See ya.
So yeah, they're coming to that trading post. They're trading goods with the kind of overall galactic kind of economy.
Right.
So I can actually be a trader in the game. I can buy low and sell high, and I could actually be really, really boring and never visit a planet. Right? I could just go from space station to space station, kind of gathering resources, buying them, and selling them.
Yeah, we'll talk more about the economy later on in our
Okay.
month of IGN first.
So yeah, another thing that I can do is I can go into my UI and I can browse through this. So you'll see that your ship, your weapon, and your suit, they all have an inventory. And in that I can install technologies, which are kind of upgrades. And I can also store kind of goods, resources.
Right.
And I can combine them from here, I can craft them, and I can use it for trade and selling later on.
And it looks like there's a player progression system. It seems you're the rank of journeyman right now.
Yeah, that's really about my ship and this type of hyperdrive that I
Got
have.
it.
Right. I can also browse all my discoveries. We just found that one little fish, right? But later on, as I go through the game, that becomes kind of really important, actually, as an explorer, because it fills in with everything that I've ever collected before.
Wow.
Right. So every discovery that I've made, everything that I've found. So it's, you know, actually becomes like an encyclopedia, basically.
Interesting.
So I've installed a new technology in my weapon. So that's how I upgrade. That's the kind of RPG element.
A
of the
No
game.
Man's in Skylopedia, if you
That-
will.
It's so catchy. We were going to call it that.
I'm sorry.
It's your.
I'll see myself out.
That's why they pay you the big bucks.
If only.
So, like right now, I can't mine this, right?
Yeah.
Because my weapon isn't powerful enough. But I install this upgrade, and so now I have a plasma weapon, right?
Oh, wow.
And so I can use that to blow giant holes in the world.
Or make caves, theoretically.
Yes, and there are cave networks that you can find. You can burrow down.
And all of this, I mean, all of this, everything on the screen is just math, right?
Yeah, that's
Underneath.
right. Everything that you see.
Everything's procedurally generated.
Yeah, and it's different on every planet. So the cool thing about this planet is that it is a planet. I can walk in any direction for days and days.
Right.
And weeks and weeks.
Are there any planets that don't have oxygen, for instance, that are just instantly
Well, actually, it's your
inhospitable?
suit that allows you to
Got it, okay.
breathe on planets. And there are some planets that are toxic. There are some planets that are radioactive. And those planets are actually like, you know, you need to upgrade your suit and your ship to be able to survive on those planets. So I can just hop on my ship, I can fly out, and I can also just take off into space.
Okay, well, just blew my mind. That was a thing that just happened. We were just walking around, you were swimming underwater, and now you're in space.
Yeah, so that's the cool thing about the game. I mean, we're here, that's one of the moons of this planet. There's another one. And there's the
my
planet
goodness.
underneath us. So if we look at the space station over there in the distance, you
Unreal.
can barely see it. But you can see little traders going over to the space station.
Yeah?
We can fly over to them. So you can see, you know, freighters warping in and out. And you'll actually see every now and then kind of like pirates warp in, start attacking, kind of making trouble. So we've just seen that there. So just some pirates warped in there.
Wow.
And I think they're probably going to try attacking those freighters. And if they do, I reckon they're probably going to get wiped out. Yeah. So when he did, he dropped his loot.
Oh, look at that, and you can just swoop right in.
I can just swoop in and grab it. So you can kind of play as a scavenger.
Yeah, how are some of the
pick
different
things up.
ways you can play the game? Like, for instance, purely exploration, purely
Yeah.
for scientific discovery,
Yeah.
purely
and
for combat?
You can absolutely play for combat, and that's a really popular way to play the game. So you can be a trader as well, but playing for combat, you would, typically either start attacking ships like that and join in with those pirates, and maybe stand a chance of taking down a freighter. And if you take down a freighter, or even try and take down a space station, if you manage to achieve that, that is a huge achievement, and will net you a lot, basically. That is kind of a real windfall, but you're going to probably get into a lot of trouble trying to do that. You'll draw a lot of police attention. So it's quite a big intergalactic crime, if you will.
So I'm preparing to be amazed again. You are so now approaching the atmosphere of the moon, of this particular moon, coming in.
And you can see that even from a distance, you can see these, these mountains, these rocks, these formations, and I can just now press triangle and land.
This is literally the most open world game of all time.
It's open universe, I guess.
Those moon dinosaurs are a little intimidated by you.
As they should be. They've heard what I did to that ghost.
The word gets around the galaxy fast.
Yeah. And so these crystals that you find, they're on a lot of planets.
Yeah.
They're not actually worth that much, but when you start off in the game, they are like a way to earn some money easily. And
Right.
actually destroying these doesn't really grab the attention of the Sentinels. If you were to mine a planet really heavily, then that would, that causes a lot more trouble. So let's just, if we do a quick scan, we can grab some of these creatures. And you'll also see a bunch of points of interest light up around the planet. So these are all places we could go and visit. They will be, some of them will be ancient relics, some of them will be actual trading posts, kind of shops where you can get things, maybe find new weapons, buy new weapons, and some of them are just kind of random drops of stuff.
So earlier you mentioned discovering things and getting to name them. So if you discovered these little baby dinosaur things, you could have named them Shaunosaurs, and then it would be that way for everyone who ever finds them?
I could have named them Shaunosaurs, yeah. And I could, go across the galaxy just naming everything after myself, if I so wish.
Yeah, why not?
So I can also just, once I'm out in space, I can hop into the galactic map.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
So everything that we've just seen is actually one planet and some of its moons. So we haven't even touched on what a solar system is, but every one of these is a solar system. Every one of these points of light is a sun that has its own set of planets, planet-sized planets that have creatures, life, and everything else.
Might some of them be light 24/7 or dark 24/7 or?
Well, actually, if you fly down to the dark side of a planet, then it will be nighttime. If you fly down to the light side of a planet, it will be daytime, and halfway in between, it will be kind of dusk or whatever. And they're all spinning on their own axis and things like that. So that's what causes day to turn to night.
Wow.
So normally, I would only be able to reach the planets nearby me, those ones that are joined by lines, with my current hyperdrive. But given that this is kind of my build of the game and I can do whatever I want.
You are literally God.
Yeah, exactly. Although I can still get killed, right? So what does that say? So I can just zoom out from this and I can kind of select anyone at random.
I hope everyone, this is, I've never seen anything like this in a video game before. I am having a bit of trouble comprehending what's going on because this is incredible.
So that over there, that's the center of the galaxy. So that's where people are trying to get to. So they start off on the outside edge.
It's the ultimate goal of the game is to reach
for
that.
a lot of people at least.
Right.
Some people will never try and make that journey. They'll just, you could actually just start up on a planet and just spend your whole time exploring it.
So what awaits us in the center of the galaxy? Spiritual enlightenment, untold wealth, immortality.
Peter Molyneux.
Curiosity Cube.
You know,
It would be amazing if Peter Molyneux were the center of the universe in No Man's Sky. I'd just like to go on record.
We'll see what we can do. No, so there is a reason that you would keep playing.
Yeah.
You know, if you got there. But for a lot of people, it'll be the point where they feel like, okay, I've completed No Man's Sky, and we're cool with that. They'll put down the pad at that point.
But
Some
does the
people will
game
never.
end technically?
No.
No, it never. You can always go. There's always
There's
anywhere
more
else
to
to
do
go.
and more to explore. Yeah, but there is certain things that become available to you, certain reasons why actually the game sort of has like almost like a new beginning when you reach the center. Why
So
it's
are there
worth
sort of
playing on.
gentle narrative hooks to slowly lure you towards the center of the universe that you're then free to ignore? Or is it purely about finding your way and just somehow being lured by the center of
You
the
can
universe?
select one at random if you want.
I will do that. I will happily do that.
So at the outside edge, things are pretty safe, actually. Where
My
you
controller's vibrating now. What does that mean?
because you're near a star.
Okay, let's take that.
And if you hit square, we can warp to it.
Lay in a pulse. Engage.
We want trading to be fun. We want it to be understandable because already the game's quite large. We are trying to simulate a universe that has trade, has traders, has pirates, has different factions. So whilst we think the UI is quite simple, things like that, and how you interact with it, actually what's going on behind the scenes is reasonably complicated. People go out, they can find resources, create products, and they can sell them at trading posts or at space stations. So the trading posts are on planets, space stations are out in space, and some planets have things like little depots and shops and things like that, which are smaller scale. So normally you are gathering some resources, putting them in your ship, flying to a trade post or flying to a space station. But you can also, like a lot of players do, just not gather resources. Perhaps you're the type of person who just never wants to do that because it seems a bit laborious, or you just don't like visiting planets, you want to play a space game. And so you can do that if you want. You can go from space station to space station, just buying goods at the space station for a lower price and selling them somewhere else for a higher price. If you're searching for an element, a great tool there is the galactic map. The first thing that's incredibly helpful if someone has been to that system before. In visiting it, they'll discover it, and then if they choose to, they will upload that information. And now anyone who goes to visit that system, anyone who goes to select it on the galactic map, is going to know more about that system. So actually, other players playing the game in a very real way are like exploring the universe, and you have that little kick of like, oh wow, you know, thanks, you know. You'll find that actually the planets are quite rich with resources. Some planets more than others. So for instance, like a barren planet tends to have more valuable resources. What you actually gather, the resources from those, are like what I would refer to as kind of atomic elements, right? They're chemical elements. And those can be crafted. Those can be joined together to create something that is more complicated. What I would call like a product, effectively. So you can craft two elements to create a product. Really what you're doing is doing things like combining two atoms to create a molecule, right? And when we release the game, we're not telling people, here are all the formulas. We're just letting players loose, and a little bit like Minecraft, people can, you know, figure out those rules themselves, because I think that's quite fun, and the game's all about exploration anyway. When you fly out into space, I actually often like to just sit there. It's quite nice because you can watch like a space station, especially a busy space station, a busy spaceport. You will see trade ships kind of exiting the space station, often going to freighters, docking with the freighters, picking up some resources from them, ferrying the goods into the space station. You'll see them flying all the way down to the planet, gathering resources from trade posts, ferrying resources back up to the space station or back up to freighters, and you get to kind of sit there and watch the kind of trade economy just in motion. I actually wanted something that you would see and you would not know that it was a game. You might think it could be a book. You might think that it could be like an album from a band. You could mistake it from a sci-fi novel. During Joe Danger, we used to talk about this game, which we called Project Skyscraper. And this Project Skyscraper idea was so like ambitious and silly and aspirational that it almost wasn't real in our minds, but it was like a thing that you could talk about and get excited about no matter what else was going on. So I started writing an engine and then kind of kept it going in my spare time. But when the other guys, Dave and Ryan and Grant came in the morning, I was like, I'm starved.
Because we were still finishing Joe Danger 2 and like various versions of that. We still needed most of the team on that, but there was enough people that we could split like a small group into their own like a private little office.
It was weird to be shut off from the rest of the team and working on something that's like really, really exciting, but not really able to tell anyone about it.
People might not want to work on it if they can't really see where it's going. So they kind of wanted it to be in a reasonable state where, you know, people can kind of visualize what it's going to be and what they're going to be doing on it and be excited about it.
And they didn't know what we were working on, and that built up a huge amount of pressure. And so the first time we really showed people was at VGX's when we announced.
Even when we had like the final video we were going to show, there were some people saying, like external to the studio, saying, you know, they weren't 100% sure of it and they wouldn't show it and stuff. But we were like, we're all excited about it. We want to take the opportunity.
So we did something really stupid, which was we like just announced the game to everyone at the same time. But the reaction was really good. People were really positive about it. We had like the most intense kind of success that you can have. The team was on a complete high and we like broke up for Christmas, and the next day, it was Christmas Eve, I got word that the office was flooding, and like by the time anyone got here it was just pretty much totally underwater. Literally we were in here Christmas Day, just throwing everything onto a skip. But at the same time, we came out of it like, you know, this sounds really cheesy, we came out of it stronger, like actually, you know, it's that underdog, us against the world. And I swear, it probably actually reset us. You know, the VGXs, we could have come out of it with like really big heads or something, you know? You couldn't do that. When you're like up to your waist in water, it was like, you know, oh, okay, we might actually be screwed here, you know? This just settled us down again.
It's always felt very ambitious, but it's always felt doable. Like even now, like it's still, because I suppose we understand the technology and the tools that we've built and, you know, what we're aiming to make at the end of it.
If I'd known when we started coding just how big the thing we were going to work on would be, then it would have just blown my mind, I think. I mean, partly being a programmer, anything procedural is just your dream project.
It is the most difficult game I've ever worked on, like without a doubt. We don't have 400 people working on it, you know, like Assassin's Creed would have or whatever. We have a really small, tight-knit, productive team, but like trying to get this huge set of systems to all work together is not the easiest thing, kind of thing. I think my actual personality is just to be like the nerdiest guy and you know, live in my room and left to my own devices. I always joke that like I'd actually be quite happy to be sent to prison, you know. Video games was my gateway into sci-fi rather than the other way around. Like playing, you know, even silly things like Space Invaders and stuff like that. But there's real kind of sci-fi influences, like a game like Exile, stuff like that, on those like early computer systems. And so I would play those a lot and kind of got into sci-fi from that point of view. And then I was kind of given sci-fi books. So the one that really grabbed me was Dune. I can actually remember reading it and just being hungry, you know, because I had forgotten to eat, basically. But such an amazing book, and it paints this picture of a world that's like so believable, you know? You kind of, everything about all of the systems, I think that's the really good thing about good sci-fi. It just makes total sense, and so you get lost in the world a little bit. There's like logic to it. I look at games now, you know, and I think video games actually almost do all the work for you now. You know, the worlds that you're in are fully imagined, whereas games that I grew up with as a kid, they were so basic that you kind of had to do all the work. You had to imagine, like you would play Elite. If you go back to Elite, the planets are just circles, you know, and yet in my mind they were like incredible places, you know, and Starfield is just some white dots on a green screen. And I think actually more than anything that got me into programming, because I could program something and it looked a bit like the kind of games that were out there. It looked quite basic, you know. Anyway, so I could do that, right? Or like there was a lot of text adventures at the time, and so I used to write text adventures because that's something I could do. Whereas now I think it would be so daunting to be a kid now and think I want to get into video games or I want to make games of my own, because it would be so hard to create something that was like, you know, what I was seeing around me, that was like something like you'd see in Unreal Engine or CryEngine or something, you know. I think that would be really off-putting. When we actually started out with No Man's Sky, and when we were prototyping for the first year, things looked actually a lot more alien and a lot more weird. And it's actually easier to create something that looks crazy and weird and doesn't adhere to our rules. It's unbelievably hard actually to create something procedurally that just looks like a tree, just an ordinary boring tree, you know. It's kind of like when people do 3D renders, right, and they do like CGI. Actually, it's easier to create a dinosaur because nobody really knows what a dinosaur looks like, you know, not accurately, and nobody's seen one in real life. We think it's really important to have, you know, some of the rules from Earth and have twists on those. And if you look at sci-fi, if you look at the sci-fi of like the 30s and 40s, it had way more of that kind of weirdness, like alien creatures float along and they're just like floating squishy brains or something like that, right? And nothing had any ties to the like real world. The decision that we've made is that when you start out in the galaxy, when you start out on the like far edge of the galaxy, everything is much more like normal, right? And then as you travel further towards the center of the galaxy, things become much more mutated, and the crazier things exist there. And that gives you a reason to explore, which is nice, right? And a reason to make that journey a bit further. But it also helps the player who just boots up the game for the first time. They're seeing something that they can wrap their head around, and then as they travel deeper into space, things get crazier, and that kind of feels about right. Hi, I'm Sean from Hello Games. I'm a programmer working on No Man's Sky. And in No Man's Sky, we're trying to create this infinite procedural universe. And I guess I wanted to explain, or at least try to explain a little bit of how that works. First place that we start is here with this galactic map. And we actually generate this entire galaxy of stars, and every single one of those stars has its own solar system with planet-sized planets filled with life and ecology. So to start here, if you imagine a sheet of graph paper, and it's like an infinitely scrolling sheet of graph paper, and we choose at random certain squares on that grid and just color them in. And those are our stars. So if you imagine that in 3D, and then you imagine it kind of warped by shapes and spirals and spheres and things like that, then it gives you these really pretty patterns, but it also gives you something quite realistic to our own kind of galaxy that we're in. So we start with that, and then we generate the planets around it. So here we are on a planet. And it's kind of cool, it's different to other games that I've played in that this is a planet-sized planet. Like, I can walk in any direction for days and days and weeks if I want, and I'll walk all the way around the planet eventually and come right back round to where I started. And it will go from day to night and back to day again. And that's just because we're orbiting around a sun, like a real sun. So that's kind of cool. It's, normally we would be in a level designed by artists and things like that. And the way that works, actually, which is really different, I suppose, is that everything that you see around you is generated. So the terrain, the water, the trees, the foliage, and the life on the planet, the creatures, they're generated, and they're generated by maths. If I go to a planet, what you see is generated just as you go there. The input to the maths is where you're stood, and the output is everything that's on screen. So if two people go to the same planet, they'll see exactly the same thing. If I go to a planet, I will always see the same thing, but it's generated there and then. It's put on the graphics card, it's rendered to the screen. And if I fly away, then it's all just thrown away. But if I come back again, it will be generated again exactly the same way because of maths, and maths always works out the same. So all we have to do as programmers is just create the algorithms that create the things that you see, the terrain, everything else, the creatures. So I can give you examples of that. I can show you some of the creatures that are on this planet and kind of how they're created. So if we pop into the editor, this is an example of one of the fish that you'll find on some of the planets. And actually what happens here is a fish is created as almost like a silhouette by our artists, and then the code basically mutates and changes that. Kind of like if you imagine an MMO and you take your character and you can slide all the different sliders and create any type of character that you want. In the same way, our artists create a fish, and then they can create the code, the program creates every variant of fish that you could imagine. So if I click this button, which allows me to view variants, then you'll see that you get just an array of fish, and I can select any of those and I can view variants of them. And I can just do that hundreds of times and I will see hundreds of different variants. And it's not just fish, like if I select some of the other creatures, then you can see kind of slightly more weird, more alien creatures, and we can view variants of those. And each one of those can be created on the planet with its own set of behaviors, its own set of properties. We give it a brain separately. So how it behaves is separate to how it looks. But we try and take more mutated characters and creatures and say, well, they're probably a bit more aggressive. They tend to have horns or antlers or weird appendages or whatever. Then they're probably a little bit uglier and they look a bit more aggressive. Maybe if they're bigger, they're a bit mean as well. And it's not just their look, it's also their animation that adapts to how they look. So if they have bigger heads, if they're created, born into our world with bigger heads, then they'll walk slightly differently. If they have 6 legs, then they'll have different IK as they walk around the planet, and they'll behave differently because of that. That's kind of how we generate creatures, and it's not just creatures, it's buildings, it's all the life that you see around you, so fish and birds, but also ships and even your weapon. Really, they're just the dressing, things like trees, grass, stuff like that. They are the aesthetics. What really changes the gameplay is the terrain, and the terrain is kind of procedurally generated too. So I can show you how that works a little bit. If I pop out into God mode, so I'll go into the free cam, and then I can just fly around a little bit. You can see that the terrain is being generated around me, and it's not just the terrain of this planet, but the terrain of, if you see other planets hanging on the skyline, on the horizon, those are generated in full too. As I fly towards them, or as I fly through the terrain that we're on here, it generates around you in higher and higher detail, kind of what we would call level of detail in games. Normally that would be created by an artist. For us, it's just created by maths. So actually, whenever I'm stood on a planet, I don't see rocks and mountains and things like that. I can see the mathematical formulas just really well. I can be like, right, I'm stood in a kind of a Fourier transform area, or I'm stood on some differential equations, basically. But for most people, it just looks like some mountain-like mountains. And that actually means that we can just fly around this planet for, like I said, days and days, and it will always look different and it won't repeat. But also, at the click of a button, we can change everything about the shape of this planet. So for instance, we can change the terrain entirely without changing the creatures or anything like that. And I often, like, that's kind of how I work. I'm that guy. I just give you an example. I can just quickly click generate and get like a new terrain, basically. And we'll get new features, new mountains, new rock formations, that kind of thing. This is all within the same planet, so it doesn't change the creatures and stuff right now, but it gives you a sense of how powerful this is. So I can click it a few more times. And we can go from planets that are entirely kind of formed of beaches and have like no mountains to things that are entirely mountainous, you know, planets that are entirely barren or whatever. So now they're like cave formations that weren't there before, and like underwater you're getting these kind of crazy ravines, and everything just works. You know, fish will just inhabit these, ships will just land at buildings that automatically get placed, AI will just work around it. And that's because everything is kind of working off these same algorithms. But what's cool is that this simulation is kind of happening not just at a kind of micro level like this, where you have life and creatures, but it's also happening at a kind of a larger scale. So if I like start to zoom out, you can see that even though there are like shoals of fish down here, there's a whole planet out there just kind of working away. And this is happening at that kind of planetary level. But it's also happening at a more like solar system level and a more galactic level. So I can just pull out of this quite quickly. And you can see moons of that planet, which will be orbiting around. Other planets kind of hanging around in the distance. And those stars out in the sky are actually like real places. It's not just a drawing of some stars. Those are kind of light of distant suns that will have their own solar systems just like this. That's what's really different about No Man's Sky. That's the thing that's unique. It's, I guess, giving this kind of, for me, a science fiction fantasy that I always wanted to see in games, even since I was like a little kid. That infinite universe is real, and so it makes sense to kind of go out and explore it. And people who play the game will be exploring it in a very real way.
Are you a good sport?
Yes.
Is the game world infinite?
Yeah.
Does the game world make Bioshock Infinite look less infinite by comparison?
Yes.
Will I get bored playing this game?
Sometimes.
Will I get bored playing this game?
No.
Are planets the size of Earth?
Yeah.
Can I rename Earth something better?
No.
Is Earth in this game?
No. Well, maybe. Something Earth-like, let's say, might be no.
Is Earth in this game?
No.
Can I teleport back to my ship?
No.
Have you found a planet that you'd prefer to live on instead of Earth?
No.
Can you collect plants in this game?
You can discover plants.
Is there a fog of war on your map?
Yes.
Will I have an objective marker?
No. You will have many.
Will the word follow appear on my screen at any time?
No.
Will you be able to play with your friends?
Yeah.
Is there a competitive element to this game?
Yeah, if you want that, yes.
Can you grief other players?
A little bit.
Will there be NPC characters?
No.
If I want to buy something in the game, do I have to go to a store?
Yeah.
Did you play Destiny?
Yes.
Can I chop down a tree?
Sort of. Yes.
Can you select a gender at the beginning of the game?
No. No. We haven't said who you are.
Can you customize the look of your character?
Sort of.
Do you ever get a good look at your character?
You can see other characters, and they can see you.
Can you settle a bet?
Sure.
Is No Country for Old Man Sky a good wordplay?
No, it's not.
Can I build shelters?
No.
Can I plant a flag on a planet?
Sort of.
If I could plant a flag, could I design the flag?
No.
Do different planets have different gravity?
No, your suit compensates for them.
So do you often go to planets and you're just like, whoa, this is just a total dud?
No, not that often. Sometimes.
Can you ride a dinosaur?
No, you can't.
Do the animals eat each other?
Yeah, they do.
Can I take pictures of the animals?
Yeah.
Can you cross-pollinate life between planets?
Is this the game you're playing, that you're going out spreading your seed across the universe?
I'm not under questioning right now.
I think it's safest that you don't.
Can you terraform a planet?
Let's say no.
Can you swim underwater?
Yes.
Can you accidentally destroy a planet?
No.
Can you purposefully destroy a planet?
A little bit.
Can you be a pacifist in this game?
Yes, although that doesn't mean that people won't attack you.
Is there intelligent life in this game?
The players, hopefully.
Is there intelligent life in the universe in real life?
Some. Not answering these questions right now.
Are there forms of life in this game that are beyond normal comprehension?
I'd like to think so.
Is there a god in this game?
No. Or maybe that's us. Wait.
Are you uncomfortable?
Yes.
Can you just live in space?
Yeah. You could just fly about your ship forever.
Are there some planets that are too inhospitable for life?
Yeah.
Are there health bars in this game?
Yeah.
Do the corners of the screen get all bloody when you take damage in this game?
No, they don't.
Is this galaxy a spiral arm galaxy?
No.
Does this galaxy exist within the mind of a child?
No. It feels a little bit like that right now, but no.
Is it super nerve-wracking to talk on stage at E3?
Yes. Yes, definitely.
Is it the worst?
This might be the worst, but E3 was pretty bad.
If I keep flying in one direction for a really, really long time, will I bonk the edge of the galaxy?
Bonk the end of it? Is that like just
That's exactly
flat
what it
out
is.
stop? Or would you prefer that it said you were now leaving the mission area?
Yes.
No, neither of those things happen. You can go into the darkness for as long as you want to.
Are there sheep in this game?
Maybe. Not that I've seen.
We know the answer.
Specifically sheep.
Specifically sheep.
Is this going back to your cross-pollination? It's just, where are we going with it?
I don't know.
Is there a threat?
Can you customize your ship?
No. You have to go and find the ship that you like.
Can you have more than one spaceship?
No.
Can you build a space station?
No. You can't. No. That's a good idea.
Can you just release the game right now?
Nobody would want that.
Will there be DLC?
No.
Can you land on a comet?
Yeah, at the moment you can land on asteroids.
Can you do this?
Yes.
Does the game contain any Joe Danger Easter eggs?
No, it doesn't. But I feel like we should do that.
Can you build a robot companion like in the hit film Interstellar?
I haven't seen it yet, but presumably, no.
Is this a miracle?
Is this a miracle?
That's what the question says.
Who writes these questions? Has somebody handed you these questions?
Possibly.
Do you mean you guys coming here, this interview?
Can I rephrase the question?
Yeah.
Is life a miracle?
No.
Is there a McDonald's near the studio?
No. It's really annoying. There's a Burger King.
Yeah, Are there black holes?
Yes.
Will the game be fun?
Yes.
Would you like to know how well you did?
No. How well did I do?
That ends the questions.